Finn walks into a barber shop in Frontier City, Yugha notes, and asks for a haircut and dye. The barber, taken aback by how rare and beautiful Finn's hair is, questions why he'd want to change it. Finn explains it's because of certain circumstances. Intrigued, the barber prompts him to share the story, and Finn begins recounting what led him there. It all started with his girlfriend Alphine, his childhood friend and one of only 3 sword masters in the entire kingdom. She's a legendary swordswoman, widely admired for her unmatched skill and beauty. People even call her the flawless sword goddess. But Finn's relationship with her has become anything but perfect. During a training session, Alphine scolds Finn, frustrated by his inability to perform a basic sword swing. She lashes out, asking why he can't grasp something so simple. Finn admits that he's never really understood her way of teaching. That only angers her more. She accuses him of being hopeless and insists that he should just obey her since she's going out of her way to help him. Finn reflects on how different she used to be. They grew up together in the same village, and she wasn't like this before. Things started changing after she received the Sword Master title. Since then, she's taken out her work stress on him, and when she doesn't vent, she resorts to biting her nails. But everything changed that day. Finn, though nervous, finally tells her he's done. He quits, both as her boyfriend and her training partner. Alphine is visibly shaken. Meanwhile, Finn feels like a weight has been lifted. For the first time in ages, he feels like himself again. His confidence, long buried under her constant criticisms, begins to resurface. Alphine, still processing, argues that he's being irrational. She insists he can't survive as an adventurer on his own. Stressed, she starts biting her nails again. But Finn remains firm. He's not backing down like he always used to. He tells her he's already returned everything she gave him, gear, money, all of it. It's waiting at the mansion she recently bought. Stunned, Alphine demands to know if Finn really believes he can just walk away from her. Finn tells Alphine he's leaving her for real this time. He's starting over as an adventurer here on the frontier. To make it clear, he even returns the commemorative sword they once exchanged when they first became adventurers. He asks if she isn't relieved now that she's finally rid of her so-called useless, good-for-nothing boyfriend. With that, he thanks her for everything and says it's time for them to walk their own paths. Alphine panics. She tells him to wait, apologizing for being too harsh recently, insisting he shouldn't take her words seriously. But Finn doesn't stop. He keeps walking and doesn't look back. Back at the barber shop, the barber responds sympathetically. Finn admits he's changing his appearance so he won't be recognized, but even so, he still feels a little sorry for Alphine. Once the makeover is done, the barber tells him to check the mirror. Finn looks and barely recognizes himself. His once rare hair is now dyed a deep red. He stares in surprise. The barber grins and says just as expected, Finn looks incredibly handsome now. He jokes that the women in the city are going to start talking. Then he hands Finn a pair of magical lenses. Made from demon-derived materials, they let him change the color of his eyes, perfect for disguises. Finn puts them on and checks the mirror again. With this new look, he thinks, even if he ran into Alphine, she probably wouldn't recognize him. When the barber asks his name, Finn almost gives his real one but decides against it. From now on, he's Flint. The barber nods, says it's a good name, and introduces himself as Lauren, a little-known barber in the city. They shake hands, pleased to meet each other. Flint steps out into the street and starts looking for the Adventurers Guild. As he walks, he notices girls and women turning to look at him, whispering. He starts wondering if his new red hair is too flashy, or if they're laughing at him. Eventually, he reaches the guild building, surprised at how large it is. Inside, he's greeted by a warm and professional receptionist named Rebecca. She asks what she can help him with, and whether he's here to register as a new adventurer. She says they can start the paperwork immediately. But Flint notices something strange. The place feels unusually quiet and empty, especially compared to the guild back at the royal capital. Rebecca returns with the necessary documents and begins explaining how things work. She tells Flint that the guild uses an emblem system to represent adventurer ranks, divided into 5 stages: iron, bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. Adventurers are also classified into 3 categories: hunters, who subdue monsters; searchers, who collect rare plants and minerals; and excavators, who explore ancient ruins. These roles can shift based on the types of requests completed. Flint fills out the form using his new identity, and Rebecca uses a magical tool to check for any criminal record. The scan comes up clean. With all formalities complete, she officially welcomes him to the Adventurer Guild and hands him his guild insignia. She explains that it's proof of membership and should be worn visibly. If he ever runs into trouble, he can reach out to the guild anytime. Then Rebecca remembers something else. The guild recently started offering free magic power measurement for new registrants. She shows him a crystal orb and asks if he'd like to try it. That reminds Flint of Alfine. Back when they were together, they never measured their magic power. She always insisted that for a true swordsman, swordplay was what mattered most. But now, he figures there's no harm in it. It's free, after all. He agrees to give it a try. Rebecca tells him to place his hand on the orb. The orb should glow in different colors depending on the level of latent magic power. But the moment Flint touches it, the crystal shatters. He quickly asks if he should pay for the damage, but Rebecca shakes her head and says it must have been defective. She brings another one, but again, as soon as he places his hand on it, it breaks into pieces. Embarrassed, Flint apologizes again. Rebecca stares at the shards, stunned. She tells him that there's only one person in all of Yughanotes known to have magic power strong enough to break those orbs, Noelia Henestrosa, also known as the Infinite Mage. The other adventurers nearby start murmuring, wondering if this mysterious newcomer has magic comparable to Noelia's. Finn quickly tries to downplay what just happened. He tells Rebecca the broken orbs must have been defective and nothing more. But Rebecca, still rattled, says she'll call the guild master to get a precise reading. Finn insists there's no need. He already knows he has magic power, and he'd rather not make a big deal out of it. As he starts walking toward the exit, he asks her to just forget about it. But before he can leave, someone calls out to him from behind. He turns, and everyone around him reacts with shock. Even Rebecca freezes and whispers the name, Noelia. Finn realizes immediately, this must be the other person who's known to break the crystal. He didn't expect her to be so young. He notices the platinum-ranked emblem on her chest, meaning her abilities have been formally recognized by the guild. Noelia steps forward and tells him she's been watching him since he arrived. She's sensed a huge amount of magic power and proposes a different kind of test, magic power synchronization. Instead of a full inspection, she wants to directly measure his power through contact. Finn hesitates, admitting he's not sure what that even is. Noelia looks stunned and asks if he seriously doesn't know. Seeing her reaction, he wonders if he said something weird. She explains, magic power synchronization is when two mages clap hands to measure and enhance each other's magic. It's something mages do routinely to gauge compatibility and potential. She reassures him it's just like touching the crystal orb, nothing too intense. It sounds simple enough, so Finn agrees to try it. Around them, the guild members are shocked. Noelia offering to synchronize with someone herself is unheard of. They whisper that an average mage would bleed out just by doing that. Rebecca even warns Noelia, reminding her that her father strictly forbade her from doing any magic synchronization. But Noelia brushes it off and tells her not to worry. As they start the synchronization, Finn feels a strange sensation, as if something's being drawn out of his body through his palms. Still, it doesn't seem nearly as intense as everyone made it sound. Meanwhile, Noelia's face starts to pale. She realizes Finn's magic power isn't just overwhelming, it's beyond her own, and it's still flowing steadily into her. Everyone watches in disbelief. Noelia's expression almost never changes, but now she's visibly strained. The guild members are stunned, wondering who this guy even is. Finn, meanwhile, starts feeling self-conscious from all the stares. He doesn't like the attention and starts to suspect he's doing something wrong. At that moment, Rebecca urgently tells him that things are getting dangerous. Hearing that, Finn immediately lets go and steps back, saying he didn't mean to cause a scene. But when he turns around, he realizes the entire guild hall has emptied out. Everyone's fled, not wanting to get caught up in whatever mess might follow. Noelia, she says, is the daughter of Lloyd Henestrosa, the ruler of this city. Finn panics. He has no idea why this is happening and tries to convince himself that it was just an accident. At the same time, Alphine finds herself lost in one of her most vivid memories with Finn, the day they fought a massive demonic dragon together. The battle had started with the dragon unleashing a torrent of flames. Finn barely avoided it, sprinting out of the blast zone. Alphine shouted after him, asking if he planned to get burned alive and telling him to move faster. Finn, catching his breath, snapped back that he was already on it. The dragon towered before them, a terrifying creature responsible for countless deaths, its flames, claws, and fangs tearing through entire armies. As they faced off against it, Alphine warned Finn that if he messed up again, she'd crank up his training. But before either of them could make another move, the dragon whipped its massive tail toward Alphine. Finn shouted a warning. She dodged the brunt of the blow, but the impact still sent her flying. Seeing her thrown like that, Finn panicked. He realized he needed to distract the dragon fast. He dashed in, sword ready, and landed a hit, but it did nothing. The blade didn't even scratch its hide. The dragon responded with a brutal claw swipe, and Finn struggled to block it, barely holding his ground. Alphine picked herself up and forced herself to calm down. She told herself that this time, she'd bring the beast down. Finn called out again. He couldn't keep it back much longer. Alphine told him to stay focused, saying he'd never win if he gave up. She unsheathed another sword, ready to strike. Finn groaned, saying that was the last thing he wanted to hear. He tried to warn her that it was already too late, but before he could finish, he got hit. The dragon landed a devastating blow, leaving him injured and unsteady. Despite that, Alphine didn't break. She told him to hold on just a little longer. If she could focus her attack, they'd win, like always. But Finn, drained and barely standing, said he couldn't keep it up. Then Alphine smiled and apologized for the wait. Finn watched in disbelief as she charged the dragon head-on. He shouted after her, calling her crazy and saying she couldn't do it alone. But Alphine wasn't stopping. She sprinted straight up the dragon's massive frame, stabbed one sword into its nose, and stood atop the hilt. Then she pointed her second sword and drove it into the creature's eye with a precise, powerful strike. Finn was stunned. She followed with one final, devastating blow. With that, the dragon let out a final roar and collapsed. Breathing hard, Alphine let out a sigh. She said it was finally over, and admitted that even her sword had worn down fighting that monster. She slumped under a nearby tree, saying the battle had been exhausting, and asked Finn to take care of the rest. Later, the two of them high-fived, proud of what they'd accomplished together. It was one of their best moments, one she still holds onto. Back at her mansion, Alphine grows increasingly irritated. She turns on her bed restless, biting her nails, fuming about Finn's decision to leave. She mutters that ever since he left her side to live independently, he's become arrogant and full of himself. The frustration is overwhelming. She thinks back to the time they fought the demon dragon together, how she believed they shared mutual trust and affection. Yet now, he's cast everything aside, not just her, but also the high-grade equipment she gave him, the money she provided for a comfortable life, and even the countless gifts she'd picked out for him. Most painful of all, he left behind the commemorative sword they exchanged when they first became adventurers. Still gnawing at her nails, Alphine struggles to understand what Finn was so dissatisfied with. They had been together for years. Suddenly, in a burst of frustration, she kicks a nearby table. The noise draws the attention of her butler, Vigo, who enters the room and asks if something's wrong. Alphine, startled, quickly covers up her mood. She tells him everything's fine and says she's just changing into her loungewear. As he steps out, she silently curses herself for thinking about Finn again. Normally, he would have picked up on her mood and kept others from walking in at the wrong time. She clenches her fists, trying to shake off the irritation. Then she asks Vigo if the Adventurers Guild has started searching for Finn in the places he might have gone. Vigo reports that the guild has commissioned several adventurers to investigate, but so far, Finn's trail has vanished. It's clear, he doesn't want to be found. That news hits her harder than expected. Alphine clenches her jaw, unable to hide her distress. Vigo adds that Finn never told anyone, not even his closest acquaintances, where he was heading. He disappeared without a word. Trying to maintain her composure, Alphine tells Vigo it's nothing, but internally she's tense. The thought of people believing she's been abandoned eats away at her pride. She thanks Vigo for the update, then instructs him to extend the search to neighboring towns. But she gives a clear warning: nobody is to know that Finn ran away or that she's the one looking for him. Before Vigo leaves, Alphine tells him it doesn't matter how much money it takes, he must find Finn. Vigo nods in understanding and exits the room. Left alone, Alphine collapses onto her bed, exasperated. Despite all her efforts, she still hasn't found him. She grumbles that if she could search for him herself, she'd track him down instantly. But as a knight, she's tied up with other responsibilities. Frustrated, she mutters that none of this would have happened if Finn had just stayed obedient. She imagines him kneeling before her, begging for forgiveness. Meanwhile, in the city, Finn suddenly sneezes loudly. Rebecca, nearby, asks if he's caught a cold. He replies that it just felt like a chill. Trying to move on, he tells her he's there to claim the reward for a quest he completed the previous day. Rebecca confirms and processes it, but as Finn waits, he suddenly senses something. He turns around, alert. Rebecca notices and asks if something's wrong. Finn brushes it off, saying it's probably nothing, just a weird feeling like he's being watched. Not quite killing intent, but still enough to make his back tingle. Rebecca hands him his reward and comments that he seems like a seasoned adventurer. He always picks just the right quests for good earnings. Finn freezes for a moment. Internally, he panics. He used to be a platinum-ranked adventurer, but after changing his appearance, he ditched the emblem to start over anonymously. Comments like that make him worry someone might figure it out. To deflect suspicion, he casually says he's been getting tips from a senior adventurer staying at his inn. Rebecca praises the approach, calling it efficient, and says he's quite sharp. Finn quickly shifts the topic, pointing to Noelia and asking Rebecca to do something about her. He explains that since the day she fainted during their magic synchronization, she's been watching him nonstop. She even followed him to his inn the previous night, and stayed in the room next to his. Finn mutters that it feels like living with a girl before marriage. Rebecca, smiling, shoots down his request immediately. Finn insists there must be something they can do, but she repeats that it's still impossible. She explains that Noelia has never been outmatched in magic synchronization, until Finn. She's been hailed as the unrivaled master of magic in all of Yughanotes. Plus, there's a direct order from the Count himself: ignore whatever his daughter does. That means the guild has no authority to stop her. Finn groans and accepts that if Noelia is just observing him without interfering, maybe he shouldn't be too worried. He leans in and quietly asks if Rebecca could speak to her for him. He figures she might have better luck persuading her as a woman. But Rebecca immediately rejects the idea again. Finn recalls that she told him to reach out if he ever needed help, yet here he is. Rebecca calmly explains that as long as he continues to possess more magic power than Noelia, she'll keep following him, at least until she loses interest. Finn lets out a frustrated sigh. At this rate, he thinks it's going to feel just like the old days, living with Alphine in that suffocating little house. Out in the forest, Finn battles a pack of mud golems. He's already taken down a few, but more keep popping up, surrounding him. It's starting to get annoying. Realizing it's better to finish them all at once, he charges in. With rapid speed and precise strikes, he slices through the golems one by one, aiming straight for their heads. His movements are sharp, efficient, and after a relentless effort, he manages to subdue every last one of them. Panting from exhaustion, Finn hopes that's the last wave. He counts the severed heads, 20 in total. That's definitely overkill. He remembers the subjugation request was only for 5 golems. Turning in all of them would raise eyebrows, so he decides to take only 5 heads back as proof. As he packs them up, he casually wonders what people even use them for. Finn starts thinking ahead. He's eager to climb the adventurer ranks, but if anyone discovers he used to be platinum, his effort to start fresh will mean nothing. He slings the bag over his shoulder and mutters aloud that if Noelia's watching, it'd be nice if she didn't say anything. Hidden in the nearby bushes, Noelia hears him and wonders if he's really trying to hide his identity. When she doesn't respond, Finn assumes silence means agreement. He's known she's been tailing him ever since they left the guild. He hoped to ditch her once they entered the forest, but she stuck to him the entire time. Then suddenly, her presence vanishes. Worried, Finn doubles back. He finds her cloak on the ground, drenched in acidic fluid. His concern deepens, and he pushes further into the woods until he finds her. Noelia is trapped, caught in the writhing vines of a plant-like man-eater. He draws his sword immediately, ready to cut her loose. She tries to warn him, more monsters are coming from behind, but he doesn't catch her meaning in time. The moment he turns, several monsters attack. He slashes them down quickly, but they start regenerating and latch onto his sword. Meanwhile, the vines around Noelia tighten, causing her to cry out in pain. Finn promises he'll be there in a second and tells her to hold on. He braces himself as the man-eater shoots a barrage of seed-like projectiles at him. He tanks the hits and pushes forward, slicing through the vines and finally freeing Noelia. Noelia thanks him, but Finn tells her to save it, they need to retreat now. He drops to one knee and tells her to climb onto his back and hold on tight. Embarrassed, Noelia refuses. She insists she can finish this herself, with magic. Finn nods, trusting her, and says he's counting on her. Noelia grips her staff and chants a spell, then unleashes a blazing fire lance at the enemy. The flames engulf the plant monsters, reducing them to ashes within seconds. Finn watches, amazed. Magic really is convenient, just as he expected. Noelia asks if it worked. Finn replies that it was perfect, but the moment he sees her tattered clothing from the battle, he blushes and turns away. Realizing her state, Noelia quickly covers herself and starts sobbing from embarrassment. Finn notices Noelia's clothes are still in tatters and thinks that if she stays like that, it's going to cause trouble. He offers her his cloak. Noelia accepts with a quiet thank you, explaining that her father would get furious if any man saw her bare skin. Once she's covered, Finn tells her the cloak conceals her well. She thanks him again. He asks if she's hurt, but before answering, Noelia casts a cleansing spell on herself. Finn watches, genuinely impressed, as she uses magic to wash away the acid from her skin. She tells him she's fine, the injury's no big deal, and the acid's gone. Finn says that's good and asks if she wants him to walk her back to the city. Noelia politely declines and says he can go back to his quests. Finn thinks to himself that she's hard to figure out, but deep down, she doesn't seem like a bad person. Still, he comments that as a platinum-ranked adventurer, she really shouldn't have let herself get caught. Noelia admits she was too focused on watching him and didn't pay attention to her surroundings, then realizes what she just said. Finn tells her he already knew she was watching him and asks why she's been following him at all. Noelia answers with a direct question of her own. She wants to know why someone with that much magic power isn't using it. With power like his, she says, it would make more sense to wipe out enemies using magic than to fight with a sword. But Finn calmly replies that he doesn't know how to use anything except a sword. That stuns Noelia. She thought everything he said back at the guild was just nonsense to hide his real strength. But Finn tells her he's never used magic before, and she's the first person he ever performed magic synchronization with. Noelia is shocked. She can't believe he holds that much magic power without having studied magic at all. Curious, Finn asks how magic works and how it's even activated. Noelia explains that magic is triggered by chanting an incantation. The core principle is visualization. If he can imagine the element and the effect he wants to create, he can influence the world around him. She adds that incantations act as tools to support that imagination and make invoking magic easier. Finn still doesn't fully understand what it means to use a chant to imagine something. To help him out, Noelia gives an example. To cast a fire arrow spell, he should chant "Become a hot burning arrow and penetrate my enemy." That kind of clear, focused sentence helps him picture exactly what the spell should do. Once he has the image in mind, he can use his magic to manifest it. Noelia tells Finn that instead of just explaining, it might be faster to demonstrate. She chants the incantation and casts the fire arrow spell. The attack shoots forward and strikes a nearby tree, blasting several large holes straight through the trunk. Afterward, she explains that memorizing both the incantation and the resulting effect is a common method for learning magic. Hearing that, Finn asks if he can do the same by saying the chant while visualizing the effect. Noelia answers that maybe he can. He has more than enough magic power, and she thinks he could invoke spells even without using a wand like hers. Finn steadies himself, thinking it's easier to grasp something by trying it firsthand. Noelia gets visibly excited. She tells him the fire arrow spell should be especially easy to imagine now that he's seen it. Watching her expression, Finn notes how serious she becomes when the topic is magic. He steps into an open area and decides it's fine to give it a shot. If it works, it could be useful for future quests. Finn starts reciting the incantation but unintentionally changes it. Instead of what Noelia showed him, he adds in new elements, imagining gigantic flames flying through the sky like an arrow. What comes out isn't a fire arrow. It's a massive fireball. Noelia watches in horror and tries to stop him, asking what exactly he's invoking. But it's too late. The spell launches and explodes violently in the distance, triggering a huge shockwave. Noelia is nearly thrown off her feet but manages to hold on to Finn. He's barely able to keep his balance himself. The explosion is so powerful that it's felt back in the frontier city. People there wonder if it was an earthquake. Finn stares at the scorched, smoking area in front of them and awkwardly asks if that wasn't a bit too large for a fire arrow. He glances at Noelia and asks if at least the shape was close. Still in shock, she tells him it wasn't anything like a fire arrow at all. Later, Finn returns to the guild to browse new quests. He mentions to Rebecca that he spent the previous day practicing magic with Noelia, but no matter how he tries, he just can't get the output right. He wonders aloud why adjusting the power is so difficult. That triggers something in Rebecca. She leans in close and quietly asks if he has any idea whether the mysterious explosion reported the day before was actually him and Noelia practicing. Finn flinches. He didn't realize people were referring to it as a mysterious explosion. He recalls the aftermath, how Noelia, brushing herself off, flat out told him that what he cast wasn't fire arrow. The power and range were totally off. According to her, it was closer to an advanced fire magic spell on the level of something like Megiddo explosion. Confused, Finn shows her exactly what he did. He tells her he used the chant she taught him and visualized the effect he saw. That's all it took to activate the magic. Noelia, still shaken, snaps that it was completely wrong. Finn insists he only misjudged the power, though he thinks the shape was kind of similar. Noelia, glaring, says there wasn't even a shape to begin with, and demands to know what that level of power even was. Finn admits he wants to know that too. Trying to rein things in, Noelia says she'll be ready to extinguish the flames this time and tells him to try again. She instructs him to imagine the flame as small as possible. Finn agrees and gives it another shot, but this time, nothing happens. The spell fails to activate. Noelia, observing, thinks he scaled the image down too much. So she suggests the opposite. Try making it as big as possible again. Later at the guild, Finn nervously asks Rebecca if he's somehow not allowed to practice magic. She reassures him that practicing isn't a problem but adds that it would be helpful to notify the Adventurers Guild in advance, especially when using anything on a large scale. Finn, confused, thinks he was only doing basic magic training. But Rebecca pulls out a document and shows him the penalty for unauthorized use of high-tier magic. The listed amount shocks him. Before things escalate, Noelia walks into the guild and steps in. She tells Rebecca that there's no need to pursue penalties. She'll cover the damage caused by Finn's magic herself. Then she hands over a letter from her father. Rebecca reads it and nods, saying she understands. She adds that the guild will wait for the guild master's decision before finalizing anything. Noelia thanks her for the consideration. Once that's done, Noelia turns to Finn and presents him with an elegant, high-quality sword. She says it's from her father's personal collection, though she slips up and admits she swiped it, quickly correcting herself to say it was originally given to her. She asks him to accept it as a token of gratitude. Finn stares at the sword, stunned by its quality. He quietly wonders if she really did swipe it. He tells her the blade is incredibly sharp, but still too much to accept as a reward. He apologizes and says he can't take it. Noelia asks if he dislikes the sword, but Finn says that's not the issue. He explains that he wants to one day purchase a sword he can entrust his life to, something earned with his own money. So, he'll accept the sentiment, but not the sword itself. Hearing that, Noelia looks troubled. She says that if he refuses her gratitude, it will disgrace her family's honor, especially after he saved her life. Thinking it over, Finn suddenly gets an idea. He asks if Noelia would be willing to become his magic practice instructor. Now that he knows he can use magic, he wants to learn how to control it properly. He admits he's spent his life with a sword and isn't confident with magic at all. After asking, Finn hesitates, thinking maybe it was too much to request that from someone like her, the daughter of a count and a platinum-ranked adventurer. But Noelia suddenly drops the sword, grabs his hand, and agrees wholeheartedly. She promises to teach him magic from the basics with full effort. Finn thanks her sincerely. Noelia then asks if he wants to start practicing again in the outskirts. Finn says he'll check with Rebecca first for permission. But Noelia smiles and says it's fine, since they won't be using large-scale magic anyway, though they should still wait for her. Watching her, Finn notes that while he once thought Noelia was cold, when she smiles like this, she just seems like a regular girl.
They return to the same field where his last spell turned the ground into ash. The burn marks are still there, a wide scar cut into the earth. Finn stares at it quietly, finally understanding what people mean when they say large-scale magic. Noelia watches his expression and tells him his power is unstable. His perception of magic is still off. Finn admits it. He's only ever lived by the sword. Magic, to him, has always felt like something far removed, something beyond reach. She says that's the problem. He overestimates it. Most people don't even have enough in them to activate a spell. The only reason his magic works is because of how much he has. And when it doesn't, it's because the image in his head isn't clear enough. So that's why it fails. Finn nods slowly, then asks if it'll stabilize once he understands it better. Noelia says it will. That's why she's here. She sets her wand down, steps forward, and takes his hands in hers. Finn blinks, caught off guard. It's the same position as before. He asks if this is another magic synchronization, and if she's going to faint again. She blushes, embarrassed, and says that only happened because she drew too much magic from him on her own. This time, it's just overlapping consciousness. Finn catches the shift in her tone but stays quiet. She tells him to chant the spell again. He does. Become a hot, burning arrow and penetrate my enemy. Then a voice answers inside his head. Noelia. She says the effect looks fine, but the size is too big again. He hears her clearly, not with his ears, but straight through his thoughts. She tells him she's inside his consciousness now, watching the magic he's forming in real time. Finn stands there, stunned. This is the first time magic has ever made sense. Noelia tells him to shrink the image more. Finn imagines a huge pool of flames and asks if that's small enough. Still holding his hands, Noelia sighs. It's still too big. Just as she suspected, he imagines magic in extremes. She says she'll keep watching until he gets it right. All he has to do is focus and adjust. Finn narrows his concentration. The blazing image in his mind starts to shrink, bit by bit. Noelia quietly guides him as he fine-tunes the size. After a moment, she finally nods. This is it. The exact size needed to activate a proper fire arrow. Finn locks the image in his mind. Noelia lets go of his hands and steps back, telling him to try it now. He recites the chant one more time, and this time, a perfectly formed fire arrow shoots out with a clean burst of heat and speed. Finn lights up. Without thinking, he throws his arms around her and shouts that it worked. He asks if that was it, if that was really the proper fire arrow. Flushed red, Noelia nods, stumbling over her words. As his instructor, She's thrilled, but she awkwardly mutters that if he doesn't mind, maybe it's time to let her go now. Though, if he insists, she's fine with staying like this a bit longer. Realizing what he's doing, Finn instantly lets go, flustered. He remembers she's a noble's daughter and scolds himself for grabbing her without thinking. He apologizes in a rush, but Noelia waves it off. She says she gets it. Finally, controlling magic feels incredible. Then she hands him her wand. She tells him to try using it now. It's embedded with a magic stone that lowers the energy cost. Normally, magic is cast through wands like this. He asks if that's how it's usually done. He wonders aloud why he didn't need one earlier. Before she can answer, a giant ant monster bursts out from behind. Noelia reacts instantly. She spins and casts Fire Lance, hitting it dead on and turning it to ash. She tells him it only worked without a wand because he's a total anomaly. She can cast up to intermediate spells without one. But what he's doing isn't normal at all. More giant ants crawl out of the ground, swarming toward them. Noelia glances around and tells Finn it's a good time to test how well the wand works in actual combat. Finn nods, thinking back to the fire arrow he launched earlier. It probably aggravated a nest nearby. Noelia comments that there seem to be a lot of them, but it'll make for decent practice. Finn quickly estimates their numbers. Maybe 50 or 60. He raises the wand, focuses, and starts firing. One by one, fire arrows shoot out with sharp precision, each one striking a giant ant dead on. The spells land perfectly, cleanly burning through the enemy line. Excited, Finn shouts that magic really is amazing. But Noelia snaps at him. It's not the time to get distracted. Finn quickly agrees and keeps up the barrage. But in the middle of casting, he realizes picking them off one by one is too inefficient. There's just too many. He remembers what Noelia said about magic relying on imagination. So instead of single shots, he pictures a full spread, multiple arrows fired at once. He tweaks the chant on the fly, shaping the magic to fit the rhythm of the battle. Noelia catches the change and freezes. That isn't fire arrow anymore. She asks what he's doing. Finn tells her he's adjusting the spell to match what the fight needs, and if it backfires, he's counting on her to cover him. Noelia stares at him like he's insane, but before she can protest, he casts it. A swarm of flaming projectiles flies out in a sweeping arc. His new spell, Fire Arrow Barrage. The ants are wiped out in seconds, collapsing in smoking heaps across the field. Noelia stands speechless, watching the monsters fall without a fight. She mutters in disbelief. Those giant ants went down like nothing. Finn laughs, still fired up, and tells Noelia he just came up with that on the spot. He says she was right after all. Magic really is powered by imagination. But Noelia frowns and shoots him a glare. That's not what she meant. Confused, Finn asks if he did something wrong. Noelia sighs, then softens. It's not wrong, she says. In fact, it was incredible. She just didn't expect him to twist her words into something that wild. Watching those fire arrows split and curve through the air, each moving like it had a mind of its own, it was mesmerizing. She tells him it's more than just impressive. It's new. They'll need to report it to the Magic Research Institute. That spell didn't exist before today. Finn watches the scorched clearing and thinks again about how far beyond the sword this power goes. Alphine would never accept it. She's always seen magic as blasphemy. But maybe that makes Magic Swordsman the perfect cover. A new identity, both true and hidden. He turns to Noelia, suddenly serious. From now on, he says he'll go by that title, Magic Swordsman. And if that's who he is, then there's only one person he wants as his guide. He holds out his hand and asks her if the infinite mage Noelia can continue teaching him. Noelia pauses, startled. Then she reaches forward and takes his hand, cheeks slightly flushed. If he's fine with her clumsy teaching, then she'll gladly help for years to come, if he'll have her. Finn smirks and jokes that it sounds kind of like a marriage proposal. Noelia stammers, caught off guard, and Finn laughs, telling her he's counting on her. That night, Noelia returns home. Her maid greets her at the door, but Noelia walks right past without a word. Once in her room, she closes the door behind her, and quietly pulls out the cloak Finn gave her during the monster attack. She clutches it close, her mind replaying every moment from the forest. The next morning, out in the woods near Huguenot, Noelia stands in front of Finn, back to instructor mode. Today, she says, they'll cover the fundamental types of magic. Finn lights up, eager to start. He asks her to explain. She nods and begins. There are 3 primary types: attack magic to damage enemies, enhancement magic to boost your own strength, and healing magic to restore wounds. Noelia explains that there are many branches of magic, but the main 3 are attack, support, and healing. Finn nods, taking it in. He asks if the spell they used before was considered attack magic. Noelia confirms. It's a simple spell that turns raw magic power into destructive force. But she warns him, any larger-scale version demands precise control. With his magic reserves, even a minor misstep could turn catastrophic. Next, she moves to support magic. She points to a spell in his book, the same one she used to clean off the acid. Finn lights up, asking if that's the one that wiped away the burn in an instant. Noelia confirms. It's a clean spell, one that alters the properties of matter. But it requires detailed knowledge of the target material. That's why she recommends familiarizing himself with all kinds of toxins and poisons. Finn says he wants to learn it someday. Noelia tells him she's sure he'll pick it up quickly. Finally, she moves on to healing magic. She pulls a small knife, nicks her finger, and casts a quick chant. The cut vanishes almost instantly, closed by a soft glow of magic. Noelia explains that healing magic works by accelerating the body's natural recovery process. But before she can finish, Finn grabs her hand. He scolds her, calling her reckless. Even if it's for demonstration, a girl shouldn't be hurting herself like that. Noelia nods, a little startled. Finn softens his grip and apologizes. Still, he frowns, clearly bothered. He hopes it doesn't leave a scar. Watching him, Noelia can't help but think how dependable he is, kind and strong in a way that feels real. But she quickly reins herself in. She made a promise to Susanna. She can't let herself get carried away. That memory flashes back. The night she held Finn's cloak in her arms, Susanna had barged into the room to help her change. Startled, Noelia scolded her for entering without knocking. Susanna explained that she had knocked, but Noelia didn't respond. She teased that her master had been restless ever since meeting that man again. Flustered, Noelia dropped the cloak and insisted it was all professional. He's her disciple. Of course they'd have magic lessons. But Susanna wasn't convinced. She warned Noelia that others wouldn't see it the same way. A noble's daughter spending time alone with a male commoner, even as a teacher, was bound to draw unwanted attention. Noelia quickly denies it, flustered. There's nothing like that between them. She's sure Finn doesn't see her that way. But Susanna just gives a smug smile. As expected, she says Noelia's fallen for him. Noelia snaps back, insisting she's wrong. But Susanna, now confident, declares she'll handle everything from here. She promises to lay the perfect groundwork. Then she turns and walks off, ignoring Noelia's protests. Left alone, Noelia grumbles under her breath. But just as she's about to shake it off, Finn's face appears in front of her. He asks if she's okay. She was just staring into space. Noelia jumps a little, then quickly composes herself. She says she's fine and suggests they wrap up the theory for now and test things out in practice. She asks what kind of magic he wants to try. Finn thinks it over, then says he wants to try enchanting his sword and using it in combat. Noelia immediately shoots the idea down. That kind of magic's extremely difficult. For now, she tells him to just observe. She picks up a pebble and casts a fire enchantment. The stone flickers with flame for a moment, then dims out and goes cold. She explains that even if you cast fire on a rock, it won't stay lit. Magic power disperses too easily. It's especially unstable with inorganic matter. Noelia adds that there are techniques to enchant objects, but they require special processes and ceremonies. It's not something that can be done in the middle of combat. Finn sighs, saying it makes sense. If anyone could do it easily, everyone would. But then Noelia mentions that if they ask her master, Linus, they might get a different answer. That catches Finn's interest immediately. He asks where this master is now. Noelia tells him Linus currently serves as the head of the magic research department in the royal capital. The moment he hears that, Finn's mood drops. He stiffens, thinking about Alphine. The capital's the last place he wants to be near. Noelia notices the change and asks if something's wrong. Finn quickly brushes it off, saying it's nothing. Then he shifts the topic, saying she's right, he should just focus on mastering basic attack magic for now. Noelia nods without pressing him further. Finn silently decides to keep his distance from the capital, at least for the time being. Meanwhile, in the capital, Alphine paces inside her residence. It's been 2 weeks, and there's still no trace of Finn. Biting her nails in frustration, she mutters to herself. She did hear a report. Someone matching his description was seen at the coach station heading to the frontier region. But she still can't believe he'd really leave her like that. Finn can't possibly survive out there without her support or connections. She remembers what others said, that he'll come crawling back after cooling his head, that she should have just been a little nicer to him. Grinding her teeth, she slashes a pillow open in frustration. Her eyes fall on the sword he left behind. She stares at it bitterly, thinking about the expensive equipment she gave him, the money, everything. Yet he still walked away like none of it mattered. Tears start to well up. Maybe leaving the sword behind really was his way of saying goodbye. Those swords were supposed to be proof of their promise, to survive together, to succeed as adventurers, to never part ways. She collapses to the floor, sobbing. Even after all they shared, he still disappeared from her life. A part of her starts to wonder if something deeper pushed him away. From outside, her butler Vigo calls out, reminding her she's scheduled to give a swordsmanship lecture at the palace. Alphine wipes her eyes, then tells him she'll be ready soon and orders him to prepare the carriage. Her eyes narrow as one particular face crosses her mind, someone she hopes she doesn't see at the palace. Later that day, at Hartford Royal Castle, Alphine knocks a knight backward with a single strike. His sword clatters across the training yard. He gasps, winded, and mutters that he didn't think a woman's attack could hit that hard. Alphine steps forward, calm and unfazed, and tells him he's trained well. Not many can last 10 rounds with her. The knight smiles politely, calling it generous of the sword saint to say that. But Alphine's expression tightens. She could have ended the match in a single strike. These pampered nobles just want to show off, not fight for real. Not a shred of grit in them. If it were Finn, he'd be clinging on through 100 rounds, puking and sobbing but still swinging. Suddenly, clapping echoes through the training ground. Jair, captain of the Royal Knights, steps in with a smug grin. He praises Alphine as the king's chosen sword saint and says it's an honor just to witness her technique. Alphine snaps back that flattery won't get him anywhere, but Jair cuts her off with a raised hand. He declares that today, she'll finally join them. With her talent, he says, mimicking her swordplay should be easy. Then he adds something that freezes her in place. He's heard her beloved Finn has abandoned her and run off from the capital. Alphine's eyes flash. In one motion, she draws her sword and presses the tip just inches from Jair's nose. The smugness drops from his face. She sheathes it just as fast and tells him that if he has time to waste on rumors, he should grab a blade and prove himself. Jair steps forward and grabs her wrist. He tells her he's only worried about her shriveled heart, starved for love and sinking in loneliness. Alphine tears her hand away without hesitation. She says Finn isn't gone. He's on a journey to grow stronger, to reach a level where he can stand beside her. And when that day comes, he'll return. Jair's smile fades. With a sigh, he says it's a shame, but if Alphine ever has any worries, she should feel free to lean on him. Then he kneels down and kisses her hand, calling her the proud sword of the kingdom and the sheath that holds his love. With that, he walks off, casually saying he'll see her later. Lovely sword saint, he calls over his shoulder. Alphine's blood boils. Nearby knights flinch as her glare cuts through the air. She snarls that training isn't over. They'll be doing a 1 versus 100 sparring session, effective immediately. Everyone will draw their swords and attack her at once. The knights start offering excuses, trying to avoid the inevitable. But Alphine shuts them down cold. As their instructor, she warns, anyone who refuses will be reported directly to the king. They can take their chances with that if they like. Fuming, she tightens her grip on the hilt. At this rate, if Finn doesn't come back soon, she might just slaughter every one of these pampered nobles. Far away in the frontier city, Finn jolts awake, heart racing. He's drenched in sweat, breath short, haunted by a nightmare of Alphine. Stumbling to the washroom, he leans over the sink and vomits. The trauma's still there. As the cold water hits his face, he mutters to himself. He tells himself to get a grip, asks himself if he really left all that behind. Finn casts clear on himself, wiping away the sweat with a quick flick of magic. His face is instantly squeaky clean. Magic really is convenient. He remembers today's job, acting as Noelia's escort for a monster ecology survey, and rushes toward the city gate. He arrives out of breath. Noelia greets him with a warm good morning. Finn pants heavily, relieved he made it on time. Noelia assures him there's no need to rush. They've only just gathered. She tilts her head, a little worried, and asks if he's feeling all right. Finn waves it off. Just a bad dream, he says. Physically, he's fine. With that, Noelia brightens. She thanks him again for accepting the request and explains the plan. She's leading a monster ecological survey today, and she wants him by her side. They shake hands. Finn says he's looking forward to it, and Noelia promises to do her best. But even as they get ready to depart, Finn can't shake the feeling that something's off. The other escorts don't look like average guards. They're skilled, sharp-eyed, and serious. Then his eyes land on one man in particular, a knight clad in a heavy black mantle, radiating quiet pressure. Finn watches as the man approaches Noelia with a stern look, clearly about to say something. But before he can speak, Noelia grabs Finn by the arm and starts walking away, saying it's time to go. Thrown off, Finn stumbles after her, asking if he shouldn't at least say hello to the person he's supposed to escort. But Noelia doesn't slow down. She calmly says that man doesn't need an escort at all. The knight walks behind them, calling out to Noelia to wait. He hasn't finished talking. But she suddenly turns, frustrated, and calls him father. Finn nearly trips over his own feet. That intimidating knight is her dad. Noelia scolds him on the spot, asking if he forgot his promise to stay quiet during the survey. If he's not keeping it, then he can go back. Her father tries to argue, but she shuts it down immediately. If that's really her father, then he's the Lord of Huguenot Margrave Lloyd, and he's being completely pushed around by his own daughter. As the investigation continues, Finn feels increasingly awkward. Just yesterday, he launched all the investigation targets into the sky. He clearly doesn't know how to hold back. At this rate, he's only going to be a liability. Behind them, Lloyd struggles up the path, muttering that he must be getting old. These trails are rougher than he remembered. Finn offers to help, but Noelia brushes it off. Her father hates being helped, she says. He used to be a platinum-ranked adventurer, he'll manage somehow. She tells Finn to just leave him be. From the way she says it, Finn gets the sense the two of them don't exactly get along. Just then, Lloyd suddenly starts shouting at Finn, accusing him of flirting with his daughter. Noelia silences him on the spot with a spell, casting a mute field before he can make a scene. She tells him not to yell in a place like this, but it's already too late. Something's coming. From the bushes, rustling grows louder. A moment later, a beast bursts out, jaws wide, charging straight at Finn. He barely blocks the strike in time, then plants his feet and yells for everyone to guard Noelia and the Margrave. The escorts are stunned. It's a forest wolf. Noelia peeks from cover and tells Finn to dial down the power. They need some of the beasts alive for the ecological survey. He says he got it, though he's annoyed he only brought a standard blade. Trying to subdue these things with basic gear isn't ideal. He scans the battlefield. The others seem to be handling the smaller ones just fine. Looks like the one charging him is the boss. The wolf lunges again. Finn sidesteps and slices clean through its side, dropping it instantly. He mutters that the bigger they are, the easier they are to read, especially compared to Alphine's sword techniques. This was nothing. But then Noelia calls his name, sharp and urgent. Finn spins around. 2 more wolves are coming fast, and he's wide open. He manages to slash one, but the second's already mid-air, until a blast of magic crashes into it and sends it flying. Flames flash past, and Finn glances back. Of course, it's Noelia. As the wolves retreat in fear, he shouts a quick warning. She responds instantly, casting Sleep Cloud. A thick, misty spell spreads across the field, and one by one, the fleeing beasts collapse. Noelia calls out for the team to capture them while they're still unconscious. Later, as they trek back, Finn eyes his chipped sword and sighs. It's hanging in there, but barely. He mutters that it probably needs sharpening again. He'll need to buy something more reliable soon. From behind, Lloyd quietly takes note. That night, while Finn rests alone by the campfire, one of the knights approaches and settles beside him. He comments that Finn seems surprisingly comfortable in the wild. Finn looks up as the man introduces himself, Mice, captain of the Margrave's Knights. He offers a flask and pours a little booze between them. Mice says Noelia mentioned Finn's only been an adventurer for about a month. Finn goes with the usual story, saying he used to work escort jobs for merchants. In the back of his mind, he hopes that's enough to hold up. No way he can mention being platinum. Mice gives him a long look, then chuckles and says that makes sense. He's clearly used to life outdoors. Finn comments that they're pretty capable themselves. The knights he used to know could barely handle camp duty. Mice laughs and explains that most of them used to be platinum-class adventurers. Roughing it is second nature by now. Finn asks if the Margrave really hires commoners as knights. Mice nods and says Lloyd might be nobility now, but he started as an adventurer just like them. He doesn't put much stock in titles. Finn admits he had no idea. Mice says that's not surprising, most younger folks wouldn't know. Then his tone shifts. He says most of the adventurers who remembered those days died during the Great Invasion. The name hits Finn like a weight. The Great Invasion 20 years ago. A massive outbreak of abyss walkers surged out from the demonic forests, sweeping through the kingdom. Neither beast nor man, the monsters tore through towns. The scars left behind still run deep. Finn lost family in that calamity, though he was too young to remember. With the army and royal knights stretched thin, the nation turned to adventurers. They were the ones who held the line. That's why so few talk about it now. Finn quietly asks if Mice fought too. Mice nods. He was part of Lloyd and Florina's party back then. Finn asks who Florina is. Mice answers with a small smile, that's Noelia's mother. She was the daughter of the Enestrosa family, but instead of staying in the capital, she left home and made a name for herself as a magician on the frontier. He trails off before continuing. Finn catches the hesitation and asks if something happened to her. Mice nods. After Noelia was born, Lloyd was officially adopted into the Enestrosa family. They raised Noelia in the relative safety of the capital. But despite Lloyd's protests, Florina joined the frontline assault team not long after childbirth, determined to fight for their survival. She never came back. Hearing that, Finn lowers his gaze. So Noelia lost her mother in the Great Invasion too. Just like him. He used to wonder why a noble's daughter would be so obsessed with magic. But now he gets it. Her roots aren't that different from his. He quietly thinks that if her mother was anything like Noelia, she must have been a beautiful person. And one day, Noelia will grow up to be just as lovely. Mice nods. He says Noelia inherited everything from her. Her energy, her drive. Even her fiery back and forth with Lloyd before the expedition reminded him of Florina. If Florina were still alive, Finn says, their family might have turned out a little less complicated. Mice chuckles, saying it's a shame. They'd get along fine if they were just a little more honest with each other. That's when it hits Finn. He's been listening this whole time, but only now realizes something. He asks how old Noelia is. Mice tells him she was born right before the Great Invasion ended. She's turning 20 this year. She's the same age as him. He stammers out a surprised laugh as Mice chuckles, saying it makes sense. Noelia's baby face throws people off. Finn awkwardly scratches his head. He's definitely been treating her like a kid this whole time. Mice leans back and says Finn's got a calm air about him too, despite looking young. Maybe it came from life as a merchant escort. Finn shrugs, saying it's just always felt normal. Mice calls him modest, then adds that Lloyd was adopted into his wife's family too. Young people with drive tend to gather around him. Before he can finish, Lloyd appears behind them without a sound. Finn stiffens up on instinct. He hasn't done anything wrong, but the pressure from the man is overwhelming. Lloyd casually holds out a sword. He tells Finn to use it during the investigation, says it doesn't matter if it breaks. That worn-out blade of his isn't worthy of a real swordsman. Even if it means going into debt, a man needs a sword that matches his strength. Finn takes the sword and slowly unsheathes it. The gleam of the blade makes his eyes widen. It looks far too valuable. Even Mice raises an eyebrow at the sight of it. Finn quickly lowers the sword and turns to Lloyd, saying he appreciates the gesture, but he can't accept something so expensive. He bows politely and offers it back, insisting he wouldn't be able to compensate if something happened to it. Lloyd waves him off. He tells Finn to take it. When he said he didn't mind if it broke, he meant it. There's no compensation required. Then Lloyd settles down beside the fire and adds that, while he's got plenty of complaints about Noelia, he respects capable adventurers, and to someone like Finn, he wants to be generous. Mice laughs and says Lloyd's more fired up than usual about this. That sword, he explains, is the kind of weapon usually reserved for knights. If he accepts this, they might try to officially recruit him. If anyone starts digging into his identity, they'll realize he's using a fake name. If that happens, there's no doubt Alphine will find him. Lloyd notices his hesitation and asks if he's dissatisfied, mentioning that the blade once belonged to him. Finn scrambles for a response, trying to find a way to decline without offending anyone. But then Noelia shows up. She says her father can be pretty stubborn, so it might be best to just accept it. Now even she's pushing for it. Lloyd nods firmly. That settles it. Noelia tells Finn he can just treat the sword like something he bought himself. It's a blade from the Enestrosa family. After all, she guarantees its quality. If he doesn't need it later, he can just give it back to her and she'll toss it right at her father. That last part makes Finn a little uneasy. Sure enough, Lloyd shouts at her. But before he gets more than a few words out, Noelia casts a silence spell. His lips keep moving, but not a sound escapes. She calmly tells him he's being way too loud for an outdoor camp. Finn glances over and starts to feel a little sorry for the man. He turns to Lloyd and says, awkwardly, that since he doesn't have a backup blade, he'll go ahead and borrow the sword for the investigation. Lloyd struggles, straining his jaw to force the magic off. He finally breaks free, only to immediately start yelling again. And again, Noelia hits him with silence. That wraps up the second day of the investigation. The next morning, Finn walks alongside Commander Mice when he spots trouble ahead. Blocking the narrow forest path are two large beasts. Mice narrows his eyes. They'll have to deal with them to reach today's site. Finn leaps into the trees, telling Mice he'll handle it. Mice nods and says he'll cover the rear. Pushing ahead, Finn gets a clear view of the targets, two dragonets. They're young, but still dragons. He mutters that if one of them roars, every beast in the area will come running. Then he remembers the silence spell Noelia used on her father. He extends his hand and casts it. Two magical bubbles snap into place over the dragonets' mouths. The key, Noelia had told him, is keeping those bubbles intact. If they pop, the sound escapes. But if they hold, no roar, no alert. Finn sees the bubbles stay solid. The dragonets don't even realize they've been muted. He springs forward. One of them spots him and tries to roar, but the spell holds. Not a sound comes out. In the next instant, he slices clean through both beasts. It's over in a flash. A voice behind him comments on the perfect cut. Finn turns and sees Lloyd inspecting the scene. The Margrave nods, impressed. The way Finn's blade slipped through without damaging the scales or wings, he says that alone speaks volumes about Finn's skill. Mice arrives and adds that the nearby monsters are already scattering. The dragonets are down and the threat's over. Finn lets out a relieved breath. Looks like he's earned his place on the team. Mice suggests celebrating tonight with fresh dragon meat. Noelia lights up, but Finn stares, stunned. They soon reach their destination, a calm, beautiful lake surrounded by dense trees. One of the mages steps forward and examines the water. The mana release is strong. He suspects this is the site mentioned in their reports. Finn watches the lake shimmer under the sky. It's breathtaking, but the magical beast presence is thick. He feels it in the air. Noelia grips her staff and casts a wide-range barrier to keep the monsters out. Once it's up, she gives the signal to begin the survey. One of the butlers steps in and explains the situation. According to previous investigations, a fissure opened after last year's earthquake. It damaged the water vein that ran from the demonic forest, and water has been gushing up from underground ever since. That vein is packed with concentrated mana, which they believe triggered the recent beast outbreak. Later, Noelia reports that they've sealed the spring successfully. She believes the danger is under control for now. Finn gazes off toward the demonic forest. It's a good distance from the outskirts of Huguenot, but the connection is clear. That forest, the origin point of the Abyss Walker invasion. Even with the spring sealed, they can't let their guard down. Then Mice calls out, letting everyone know they've found a good place to camp for the night. Noelia joins Finn later and tells him she's prepared food. He thanks her as she offers him a sandwich. She apologizes that it's something so simple for camping, but Finn gladly accepts, genuinely grateful. Everything looks amazing. Noelia sits beside him, mentioning that if they were at her mansion, she could have prepared something more proper. Finn takes a bite of the sandwich and thanks her. The moment it hits his tongue, his eyes light up. He tells her it's already delicious. The dragonite meat is fresh, but it's the seasoning that makes it exceptional. Noelia smiles shyly at the compliment, and when Finn adds that she'd make a good wife, her cheeks turn red. Finn admits he didn't expect her to be the one cooking. Noelia tells him that being an adventurer means learning to fend for yourself, including cooking. She takes a bite and says it's tastier than usual, likely thanks to how well he drained the blood. Finn explains that with smaller dragons, blood circulates more thoroughly, so if it's not removed properly, the meat ends up with a foul odor. That reminds him of Alphine. Back when he told her that, she snapped at him to shut up and claimed it tasted the same either way. She could do nearly everything perfectly, but when it came to household chores, her laziness hit catastrophic levels. Because of that, he ended up getting better at chores himself. A voice cuts in from behind. They turn to find Lloyd standing there, eyes fixed on Finn with a sharp glare. Before he can say anything, Noelia steps between them, her tone firm as she tells him, if he's got something to say to Finn, he can say it to her instead. Finn steps forward and returns the sword, saying the investigation went smoothly and he'd like to give it back. Lloyd sighs and mutters what an inflexible guy. He already told him to keep the sword, but Noelia steps in, reminding him that while that's true, if Finn-sama says he doesn't need it, then a real man should respect that. Finn adds that he's returning it because, instead of taking a reward, he wants to forge a sword that actually suits him. Yesterday, Lloyd told him that a swordsman needs a proper weapon, even if it means going into debt. So, he figured he'd borrow some money and have one crafted. Lloyd considers it for a moment, then nods. He says he knows a smith who can handle that kind of job and offers to contact them. As a reward, he'll cover the cost. And he makes it clear he won't force Finn to join his house as a knight, so he can rest easy. Relieved, Finn thanks him and humbly accepts the offer. But just before Lloyd walks away, he spins around with a sharp glare and declares that while he'll give Finn the sword, he won't be handing over Noelia. Before he can finish, Noelia silences him with her spell again, muttering that he needs to stop talking nonsense. Meanwhile, back in the capital, Alphine sits alone in her room, whispering that it's been a month since Finn disappeared. She still doesn't want to admit he left her, but over the past few weeks, she started to understand why. She was the problem. She admits to herself that she was spoiled. Because they'd always been together since childhood, she thought she could get away with anything. Everyone called her the Sword Saint, the goddess of the blade, but really, she's selfish and short-tempered. To keep Finn close, She told everyone he was her lover, making sure no other girl would approach him. And because he was too kind, he just kept quiet and endured it. She breaks down in tears, whispering that if only she had been more honest with him, maybe things would have turned out differently. A sudden knock on the door breaks Alphine's thoughts. Her butler Vigo steps in, saying he has news about the search for Finn. His tone is serious. He informs her that a man carrying Finn's platinum adventurer insignia has been detained in Algren. Alphine jolts in shock, but her eyes narrow a moment later. She asks how they can be sure that the insignia actually belonged to Finn. The butler hesitates, then explains that while this is technically classified, since Alphine is in the king's favor, he's allowed to share it as a special exception. He asks her to keep it secret. Alphine solemnly nods. She promises not to reveal a word of it. Swearing upon her sword, she urges him to continue. The butler explains that when the kingdom first partnered with the Adventurers Guild, impersonators and criminal abuses by high-ranked adventurers became a problem. So, to prevent identity fraud, all insignias above gold rank were engraved with a special identifier, linking the badge to personal records, portraits, and guild affiliations. The data is accessible across all guild branches. Alphine's eyes widen in disbelief. She mutters that this is the first time she's ever heard of such a system. The butler nods. That's natural, he says. Only a handful of high-ranking guild officials and select nobles are even aware of it. Alphine takes a breath as everything clicks into place. So they've been supervised this whole time. Her butler confirms it with a nod. He goes on, saying that a man carrying an insignia engraved with Finn's identification was spotted and is already being held at the Adventurers Guild in Algren. If she wants to meet him, now's her chance. That sparks something in her. Alphine's eyes light up with hope. She asks if he believes Finn is still in Algren. The butler answers carefully. Right now, the insignia is their only lead. But even so, it's worth investigating. She nods firmly. She'll request an audience with the king and apply for a leave. The moment it's granted, she'll head straight to Algren. Back at the Frontier Guild, the room goes stiff the moment Finn walks in. Eyes dart toward him. The chatter turns into whispers. Someone mutters that Finn froze the entire lake while taking down those giant frogs. Others talk about how he shredded a whole wolf pack without a scratch. A few just stare, repeating the rumor. They knew Finn isn't some regular rookie. Before he can process the awkward stares, Rebecca waves him over from the counter. She says if she doesn't handle his paperwork now, the crowd won't get any smaller. Finn apologizes and heads over but hears gasps behind him just for speaking. He leans in and quietly tells Rebecca that everyone seems unusually nervous. She shrugs and says it's natural. A magician who can blast large-scale spells back-to-back with insane mana reserves and still outduel monsters with a blade gifted by the Margrave. Of course they're terrified. That kind of makes him sound like a public threat. Finn explains that he's only recently gotten better at controlling his magic, and that the sword was just a reward. But Rebecca waves it off. She's already heard the whole story from Noelia. According to her, Finn decapitated a dragonet cleanly, without even taking a hit. Finn tries to downplay it, blaming the sword's sharpness, but Rebecca just grins and tells him not to bother. Everyone knows the truth. Then she warns him, veteran adventurers have an unspoken rule. Don't mess with the magic swordsman named Finn. That catches Finn off guard. He admits he had a feeling people were avoiding him. Rebecca says that's not fear, it's respect. In this world, power means everything. With that, she hands him his new paperwork and asks for his insignia. After a quick check, she slides a different one across the counter and congratulates him. His subjugation of the dragonet and other achievements have officially bumped him up to bronze rank. Finn pins the insignia to his collar, still a little stunned. That was fast. But he's grateful, it means he can start earning more. Then Rebecca adds something else. A personal request came in, specifically addressed to him now that he's bronze. He wonders who would be that whimsical with a fresh bronze-ranked adventurer. She tells him it's the Margrave. That gets a reaction. Finn looks stunned. Rebecca explains further, the Margrave wants to assign him a specific task, and insisted on explaining it in person. She asks if Finn knows where the estate is. He nods. Noelia told him about it. But before leaving, He asks if it's all right to decide whether to accept the request after hearing the details. He's got a bad feeling this is going to be something dangerous. Rebecca nods and says she'll pass the message, that he's heading over soon. Later, at the Margrave's estate, Finn arrives to find Mice waiting at the entrance. He explains he's here for the Margrave's request, and Mice nods, saying Lloyd already informed him. He gestures for Finn to follow. As they walk inside, Finn's eyes drift to the hallway walls, lined with old, battered armor. It's not what he expected from a noble's estate. Mice notices and comments on it with a dry smile. The place isn't built for luxury. Lloyd believes in giving back to the people, pouring funds into training knights and stockpiling weapons instead. They're preparing, Mice explains carefully, methodically. If another great invasion ever happens, this house will be ready. Mice's tone turns a little darker. In the capital, nobles whisper behind their backs. They call them war fanatics. But Finn shakes his head. To him, it's just good sense. It fits the Margrave's character. Tough, grounded, burdened by duty. Outside a large door, Mice announces their arrival. From inside, Lloyd's voice calls them in. Finn steps into a warmly lit room to find the Margrave and Noelia seated at a long dining table. Susanna moves between them, calmly pouring tea. Noelia lights up when she sees Finn and waves him toward an empty chair. She says the meeting is private, so there's no need to get too formal. As Finn sits down, Mice excuses himself. Lloyd nods, commending him for his work. Finn gets straight to the point. He's here to confirm the details of the Margrave's direct request. Lloyd asks if he remembers the skilled blacksmith he mentioned earlier. That man is his exclusive smith, and his own sword needs repairs. He wants Finn to take it over to the workshop. While he's at it, he says Finn should have his own custom sword made too. Finn thanks him sincerely, but Lloyd raises a hand and warns him. The blacksmith's a bit of a character. His workshop's in Yasuba's hunting grounds, right near the edge of the demonic forest. Finn blinks at the mention, clearly wondering why anyone would set up shop there. Lloyd shrugs. He's a weirdo, plain and simple. According to the Margrave, the guy's huge and full of energy, and despite being told not to scare people, he keeps pulling the same bizarre stunt over and over. Finn tries to get clarification from Noelia, but she just glances away like she'd rather not explain. Lloyd tells him he'll understand when he sees it. Still, he adds, every sword the man forges is top class. That much he can guarantee. He hands Finn a map marked with the exact location and asks if he'll take the job. Finn nods and says he'll humbly accept. But then Noelia jumps in. She says she's familiar with the blacksmith too, so she'll go with him and guide the way. Lloyd jolts at that, clearly not expecting it. Noelia just adds that since it's already late, Finn should at least stay for dinner first. Lloyd immediately bursts out, yelling at Noelia to hold it right there. He shouts that she's trying to run off with Finn again and starts to declare that he won't allow it. But before he can get another word out, Noelia shuts him up with a silent spell. The table goes quiet for a beat. Then the rest of dinner continues as if nothing happened. Noelia eats casually, while Finn can't help but feel a little sorry for the Margrave. Later that night, Susanna helps Noelia change into her nightdress. But Noelia's clearly distracted, staring off into space, her mind somewhere else. Susanna raises an eyebrow and asks if she's even listening. Snapping out of it, Noelia mumbles an apology. Susanna smirks. She asks if Noelia was thinking about Finn, and Noelia immediately flushes red, trying to deny it. But Susanna waves her off, saying she already knows. It's obvious how much she wants to be with Finn, so maybe it's time to find a better method than silencing her father. Blushing harder, Noelia agrees. Susanna then adds that Lloyd seems to have taken a liking to Finn. Hearing that, Noelia perks up, eyes wide with hope as she asks if Susanna really thinks so. Susanna notes that it's rare for Lloyd, who's notoriously hard to please, to be cracking a smile like that. Noelia wonders if it's because he saw Finn's skills firsthand during the investigation, and Susanna proudly says her groundwork made it all possible. Noelia reflects on how her father has finally acknowledged Finn's strength, even if not fully as a suitor. Still, Giving him a knight's sword means he's considering him as a future retainer. She suddenly imagines Finn kneeling, telling her he'll protect her for the rest of his life, then gently kissing her hand. Snapping back to herself, she shakes her head and mutters, what is she even thinking? She's just his teacher, but somewhere deep down, she knows that's not all she wants to be. Those sharp but kind eyes, those strong yet gentle arms, she's starting to crave more. Susanna gently remarks that Noelia seems troubled. Noelia admits it. She feels awful. Their statuses don't match, yet she wants those feelings to be returned. She thinks she has no right, especially after all the impulsive things she's done. But Susanna tells her not to overthink it. If it's about arranging things behind the scenes, she'll take care of it. Noelia quickly grabs Susanna's hands, asking her not to. She pleads with her to stop doing unnecessary things, says she's happy the way things are. But even as she speaks, her knees give out and she sinks to the floor, trembling. Deep down, she doesn't believe a word of it. Susanna gently lifts Noelia off the floor and teases her for being so awkward, crying like that. She pulls her into a warm hug, telling her that part of her is just like Lloyd. After ruffling Noelia's hair, she tells her to get a good night's sleep since she'll be leaving tomorrow. The door closes softly behind her. Left alone, Noelia pulls out Finn's robe from under her pillow and clutches it close. Her thoughts drift to him, quiet and full of longing. The next day, Finn and Noelia step off their wagon near the Grand Canyon's entrance. Finn offers his hand to help her down, and she thanks him softly. Staring at the horizon, Finn says he hasn't been this way before. Noelia hesitantly points to a nearby cabin and tells him there's a great view past it, asking if he'd like to go see it together. Finn nods with a smile, saying if she wants to, then let's go. Her whole face lights up. She grabs his hand and pulls him toward it, practically skipping with excitement. Finn notices how cheerful she is today, but as they hurry toward the edge, Noelia suddenly trips. She stumbles hard, nearly pitching forward off the cliff, but Finn lunges and grabs her just in time, pulling her back and telling her to watch her step. Noelia quickly pulls away, cheeks flushed. She mumbles an apology. Finn's still holding her, his arms just as strong and sturdy as she imagined. Her heartbeat picks up. It pounds faster with every passing second, and she starts to panic over whether he can hear it. He eases his grip and asks if she can stand on her own. Noelia nods, then says the view is best from this spot. She hesitates, then asks if he could keep holding her a little longer, just so she doesn't fall. Finn agrees and gently pulls her close again. They look out across the canyon together, breath caught by the sweeping view. Finn says he understands now why she wanted to bring him here. He's never seen anything like it. Noelia points to a river snaking down from Mount Yava. She explains that when it floods, which happens once every few decades, the entire canyon gets submerged. Finn listens, trying to picture how water could fill something this narrow, but struggles to imagine it. Noelia adds that nature tends to defy expectations. Finn glances at her again. She turns her head, and their eyes meet for a moment before Noelia quickly looks away, face red. Her gaze drops to his neck, and she notices something. She leans closer and asks about the faint marking. It looks like the pattern of an ear of wheat. Finn stiffens, instinctively reaching up to cover it. He explains that it's a charm passed down in his hometown, meant to ward off illness. Its effect is said to weaken if others see it. Noelia is surprised. She says that explains his habit of wearing high collars. Finn nods, still a bit uneasy. Finn's eyes lower for a second. That mark on his neck, he remembers now, it wasn't some old family tradition. It was put there by the director of the orphanage. If anyone digs too deep, it could bring trouble. For now, he needs to keep it hidden. He wonders how the director's doing. The memory flashes back to a few days ago. He'd gone to the guild to ask Rebecca about sending money back home. She explained that it was totally doable. Some adventurers send money to their families, and the Adventurers Guild staff handles the transfers until they're complete. Finn felt a wave of relief. Rebecca handed him a form, saying he needed to write down his name and details. Using his alias, Flick, would only confuse the orphanage. But he couldn't exactly write Finn in front of Rebecca either. He told her he wanted to send the money anonymously. That caught her attention. She recalled that the guild does support donations to orphanages and explained that it's possible, if it's filed as a charitable donation. There'd be a small handling fee, but that wasn't a problem for him. He thanked her and asked her to go ahead with the registration. Rebecca nodded, counted out the coins he handed over, and confirmed that the paperwork and amount checked out. Finn gave her another quiet thank you. He was glad he managed to get the money out before heading into Yasuba's hunting grounds to meet the blacksmith. Rebecca confirms if it's Gawain's place, and Finn nods. He tells her he accepted that request earlier. She warns him Gawain's personality is a bit unusual, but his smithing skills are the real deal. Finn says the Margrave already called him a weirdo, so he's just hoping for a relatively peaceful trip. He asks what kind of place Yasuba's hunting ground is. Rebecca pauses, then tells him that with his skill level, she doesn't think there'll be a problem. That answer puts Finn on edge. He repeats that it's the hunting ground part that concerns him, but Rebecca just smiles and wishes him a safe trip, which only confuses him more. He hears Noelia call out, so he heads over. She seems cheerful, but as they walk, Finn notices her pace slowing. She's panting heavily, clearly struggling to keep up. He turns to check on her, but before he can say anything, something flashes through the air. Finn shouts at her to get down, and they both dive as a gale eagle swoops past them. The wind from its wings kicks up dust and leaves. Finn quickly chants a spell and fires an air blade, but the eagle dodges with ease, leaving him frustrated. Noelia asks what kind of magic he'll use when the target is flying that fast. Finn gathers more power. The wind around him thickens as he prepares for the next strike, just as the eagle circles back and charges again. Finn casts wind barrier just as the gale eagle dives again. The beast slams into the barrier mid-flight, and the impact knocks it clean out of the sky. Blood sprays from its beak as it crashes to the ground, stunned. Finn turns to Noelia and asks if that kind of spell is really supposed to hit like that. She looks a bit surprised, then admits she doesn't think it's supposed to. She explains that wind barrier is originally meant for defense against projectiles, and she didn't think it could be used like that. She quickly notes it down in her magic textbook, already updating her understanding. Finn asks if his way of using magic is really that different from how others use it, and Noelia confirms it is. But she tells him that kind of flexible thinking is a strength. She adds that because he's a swordsman, he uses magic without being stuck in conventional molds. And even though she's acting as his teacher right now, she's learning a lot from him too. She asks him to keep experimenting with magic the way he naturally does. Finn nods, saying he'll keep that in mind and try not to cause too much trouble like before. Noelia smiles and says that's perfectly fine. Finn admits that having fought with a sword for so long, he still hasn't adjusted to magic combat distances. He's used to fighting up close, and it's hard for him to immediately think of ways to attack from far away. But Noelia says that's actually a good thing. She believes he has talent in both swordplay and magic, so he should fight at whatever range feels natural. Just because he can use magic doesn't mean he has to fight like a traditional mage. If close range is too risky, that's when magic should come into play. Finn thanks her and says he understands. Noelia reminds Finn of what she said before, about being flexible with magic, and adds that the same applies to how he fights. He doesn't need to conform to the rigid methods of swordsmen or magicians. For someone like him, who's spent years honing the sword while carrying rare magical talent, there's a path that only he can walk. Finn lights up at that, repeating her words with excitement. Neither swordsman nor mage, a style all his own. Noelia smiles, telling him he's going to be just fine. One day, he'll be the magic swordsman known across all of Huguenot. Finn gets a little shy but admits that would be pretty amazing. Then Noelia pulls out a map to go over their route. As she talks through their progress, Finn watches her with quiet admiration. She knows so much more than she looks. He can't help but wonder how many books she must have devoured to reach platinum rank at such a young age. After the check, Noelia picks up the pace, saying they're nearly at Yasuba's hunting ground. Finn calls after her and jogs to catch up. Meanwhile, Alphine arrives in Algren, the mining city. Standing beside her butler, she takes in the sight, Smoke hangs in the air, coating everything in gray. Her butler explains that vast deposits of ore and minerals still lie hidden beneath the city. With its furnaces burning day and night, Algren earned its nickname, the City of Smoke and Ashfall. Thanks to its ore refining and exports, it's become one of the kingdom's key industrial centers. Alphine quietly hopes that if Finn is really here in Algren, she'll be able to apologize, say everything she never had the courage to before, speak honestly, and part on good terms. Then she'll return to the capital with no regrets. Her butler's voice snaps her back to reality, urging her forward. She nods and follows. Before long, they arrive at the Adventurers Guild. A receptionist meets them and offers to guide them downstairs. She leads them into the basement, toward a dim cell. When they reach the bars, she calls out to the prisoner. A man stumbles forward, blinking at the light. He eyes Alphine warily, saying he's already told them everything and doesn't have more to say. But Alphine doesn't hesitate. She grabs him by the collar and coldly accuses him of wearing a platinum insignia and faking his identity. She makes it clear she's not interested in him, but in the person he pretended to be. Then her tone drops, firm and serious, as she asks for his cooperation. Panic sets in fast. The man shouts that he'll talk. He claims it was just chance. He found the insignia on a boy passed out in the slums. That boy had dark hair, rare in the kingdom, and a slender frame. His face was so delicate he mistook him for a girl at first. He was lying in a heap of trash, barely breathing. The moment Alphine hears that, her eyes widen in horror. She grabs the man again, tears his filthy shirt open, and demands to know what happened to that boy. The prisoner drops to his knees, trembling. He begs Alphine not to kill him and swears he'll tell her everything. He confesses he doesn't know what happened to the boy afterward, but sick people from the slums are usually taken in by the church. He glances at the receptionist, saying she knows more. That's all he's got. Alphine turns to the woman at the desk, demanding confirmation. The receptionist calmly nods. It's true. The church regularly takes in the sick from the slums, but the guild doesn't track them afterward. Alphine then asks why he stole the insignia and faked an identity. The man lowers his gaze. He says life in the slums is miserable, and he thought a platinum rank would earn him a better chance at survival, maybe even a way out. Alphine lets go and shifts her focus back to the receptionist, who asks if she wants to head to the church. Alphine nods without hesitation. The receptionist instructs her to wait at the guild's entrance while she makes contact with them. Outside, Alphine and her butler step back into the cold streets. He mentions that if the prisoner's story is true, the features of the boy in the trash match Finn's almost too well. But Alphine just smiles faintly. She insists that Finn wouldn't get sick, not even in a place this cold. Even if the boy had rare dark hair, it's probably just a coincidence. After some time, Alphine and her butler reach the slum district. She scans the shaded alley and mutters that this must be where the man saw someone slumped over, someone who looked like Finn. Her butler agrees. Most likely, this was the place. Alphine crouches near the wall, imagining someone collapsed here. She quietly asks if he really collapsed alone, in a spot like this. The butler explains that with a shift in environment, heavy mental strain, and accumulated exhaustion, even a healthy person could break down. Hearing that, Alphine's expression softens. She admits it's her fault. She's the one who caused all those things.
Alphine turns and spots a group of people loitering nearby. Even in broad daylight, too many are just idling around. Her butler quietly notes that most here don't have steady work and warns her to move along. The public order isn't reliable. They should head for the church before trouble finds them. But before they can leave, a small girl bumps into Alphine, making her flinch. The girl quickly mumbles an apology and tries to slip away, but Alphine calmly places a hand on her shoulder. Smiling, she asks the girl if she plans to return the pouch she just pocketed. The girl freezes, then insists she didn't take anything. A boy's voice interrupts from across the street, calling out to her, "Liz." He scolds her, saying stealing again isn't okay. If she keeps it up, she'll end up in jail. Liz turns and snaps back. She says she doesn't have a choice. If she doesn't do this, she won't even have enough to eat. While the children argue, Alfine's butler tells her they're immigrant kids. Other ethnic groups gather in Albrin hoping to find work, but it's hard for drifters like them to make a decent living. Alfine listens quietly, then sits down and tells the little girl that food bought with stolen money won't taste good. The boy turns to Liz and says he'll apologize, so they should give the pouch back quickly. After returning it, he promises her that he'll grow up fast, get a job, and let her eat whatever she wants. Alfine hears him and freezes. Finn once said the same thing. Back when things were hard, he told her he'd grow up quickly, get stronger, and protect her. She asks the boy if he really means it. He replies cheerfully with a yes. Back in the present, Alfine pats Liz's head and says they're good kids, so they should be kind to each other from now on. Liz replies cheerfully that of course they will, and the two children run off. Alfine stands there thinking. She's grown up into someone who can't be honest with herself, spoiled and unconsciously reliant on him, just because they were childhood friends. Later, she and her butler arrive at the church, where a nun greets them. They explain that they're looking for a man with black hair who collapsed in the slums a few days ago. The nun nods. She says the guild already contacted her, and there was indeed a man who matched that description. But by the time he was carried in, he had already passed away. Alfine panics. She loses her composure and demands to know what the nun means. The nun confirms it again, he was already dead. She adds that the man didn't have an adventurer's insignia on him, so they treated him as an unidentified body and placed him in the underground room. Alfine breaks down. If that's true, she'll never see him again. She'll never get the chance to apologize. Her butler quickly tries to calm her. He asks the nun if placing him in the underground room means he hasn't been buried yet. The nun nods. Unidentified remains are kept unburied for a set period in case someone comes to claim them. In this case, that period ends tomorrow. She offers to show them the body, so Alfine can confirm if he's the person they're looking for. Alfine hesitates. If Finn is inside that coffin, then it's over. But walking away now would be the same as ignoring something difficult, just like she always did. And she promised herself she'd change. Alfine tells the nun she wants to confirm the remains. As she walks toward the coffin, she silently prays, "Please, let it be someone else." The nun explains that the man passed a few days before arriving there. The mice and crows had, but she stops mid-sentence. She warns Alfine that the body's condition isn't pleasant and asks if she really wants to go through with it. Before Alfine can respond, her butler steps in and says it's okay. The lid comes off. Alfine takes one look and immediately vomits. After a few moments, she regains herself and says she's fine, then steps closer to examine the body. She notes the man's height, about the same as Finn. His clothes match too, but they're standard gear anyone could buy at an equipment store. The hairstyle is similar, and while dark hair is rare, it's not unique. None of it is enough to say for certain. Then she remembers the tattoo on her neck. Finn had the same one. She checks the corpse's neck, and finds it. She stares at the mark, and everything hits at once. Her memories with him come rushing back. Through tears, she says she still hasn't apologized. She tells him to wake up. To say, "Good morning, Alfine," like he always did. Then she breaks down, crying out why he had to die. Her legs give out, and she collapses unconscious. Finn and Noelia finally reach their destination. She points to a workshop ahead, saying that's the place. Finn glances around, nothing but wetlands and grasslands in sight. It's a stunning location, but strangely remote. Just then, a shadow streaks overhead. A winged dragon roars through the sky, clutching something in its talons. Finn narrows his eyes, already putting the pieces together. Before he can finish asking, Noelia confirms it. This is Yasuba's hunting ground. Winged dragons descend from the demonic forest to snatch up prey gathered around the watering holes. That's how the area got its name. As they approach the workshop, Finn notes how strangely ordinary the building looks for a place where dragons fly overhead. Noelia adds that Master Gawain is a bit eccentric, but he's also one of her instructors. She glances aside mid-sentence, then casually claims he's probably harmless. Finn raises an eyebrow and tells her not to say things like that while looking away. She insists it's just his imagination. Then she asks him to wait while she prepares the door. That throws Finn off. He watches as she chants a spell and casts a wind barrier around him. He tenses, asking if the workshop is booby-trapped or if her master's the type to fire arrows without warning. Noelia denies it, calling it a precaution. Nothing to worry about. She taps the door with her staff, and the moment she does, it blasts open. A man rockets out of the workshop at wild speed, shouting Noelia's name at the top of his lungs. Finn blinks in disbelief. The man moved so fast, he didn't even get the chance to react. Noelia's wind barrier saves her just in time. The older man slams right into it with a loud thud. Rubbing his head, he frowns and asks what the wall is for. Then, in a dramatic tone, he complains that this means he can't even share a little skinship with his precious Noelia. He insists it's been a long time, and a hug should be fine. What's she going to lose from it anyway? Noelia tells him she'll lose her mental well-being. Trying to keep things on track, Finn steps forward and asks if he's the blacksmith Gawain. The man glances at him, then throws his hands up like it's obvious. Then Gawain pauses. He narrows his eyes, staring at Finn's red hair and red eyes. A second later, he asks if he's Flint. Finn nods. Gawain circles him, inspecting him from head to toe. He mutters that if even that sword-obsessed freak Lloyd Henestrosa took a liking to him, he must be interesting. Finn then takes out the sword from Lloyd and explains that the Margrave sent it for polishing. As Gawain examines the blade, Finn adds that he also came to commission a new sword, and asks if he'll accept the request. Gawain grins. Then, without skipping a beat, he says he'll polish the sword and craft the new one completely free if Finn can bring down Noelia's wind barrier and convince her to allow some skinship. Finn freezes, stunned by the condition. Gawain casually hands Lloyd's sword back and remarks that it's not in bad shape. While Finn weighs his options, Gawain casually mentions that every sword he forges is worth at least 1,000,000. He only makes sharp blades, nothing less. Finn knows he's not bluffing. A smith this skilled would definitely have work that commands top prices. Finn exhales and turns to Noelia. He tells her they're leaving. Noelia blinks, surprised. She asks if he's really going to walk away. If she just endures it, they can get the sword for free. But Finn shakes his head. He doesn't want her to go through anything unpleasant just for the sake of a good weapon. He'll find another smith in town instead. Noelia reminds him of her father's request, but Finn says he'll apologize for that too. Gawain watches him in silence, then asks if he's really okay giving this up. His swords are some of the best in the entire kingdom. But Finn stands firm. Even if that's true, he says he won't sacrifice someone else to get what he wants. So Gawain can forget the request. He turns to Noelia again and says it's time to head back. She nods quietly, a little nervous. But before they can leave, Gawain bursts out laughing. He calls Finn a strange man, a complete fool. He says most swordsmen would give up everything to own one of his blades. But this one just turned it down without hesitation. Still grinning, Gawain says that's exactly why he likes him. And since he likes him so much, he'll let him experience some skinship too. Finn barely has time to process the words before Gawain lunges and grabs him in a crushing hug. Noelia steps back in alarm, warning him to run. But it's already too late. Finn's caught in a death grip, groaning in pain. Gawain tells him not to squirm. Skinship like this should be shared slowly, carefully. Finn grits his teeth, struggling to break free. He thought this guy was just a musclehead, but now he can't even budge. Noelia suddenly shouted at Gawain, telling him he was going overboard, then cast sleep magic on both of them. After some time, Finn wakes up to see Noelia right in front of him, asking if he's awake. He gets up and asks where he is. Noelia apologizes for not warning him properly. Master Gawain's prank had been too much. Finn tells her he's fine and asks who exactly Master Gawain is, noting the man's unbelievable physical abilities for a blacksmith. Noelia explains that Master Gawain has mastered physical enhancement magic, which, as the name suggests, strengthens the caster's own body rather than affecting others. She says Gawain realized that by enhancing his muscles with magic, he could improve his smithing skills to an inhuman level. Since most magicians rely on attack magic, they don't focus on strengthening their bodies. That's why others see Master Gawain as strange. Just then, Gawain's voice carries from outside, saying he can hear her making fun of his magic. Finn thinks to himself that most magicians wouldn't get into close combat. They'd rely on attack magic rather than boosting their physical strength. Noelia explains that since Master Gawain constantly uses physical enhancement magic, she put up the wind barrier to protect Finn from unnecessary injuries. Speaking in a sad tone, she admits she spoke ambiguously to avoid giving him strange ideas, but it backfired. She apologizes for that. Finn laughs it off and says it's okay. He jokes that he'll start using wind barriers from now on too. Noelia agrees it's a good idea, mentioning that Master Gawain has taken a liking to him. She smiles and says she thinks Gawain will forge a sword for him because he only makes swords for people he likes, aside from her father's requests. Finn then asks Noelia to teach him physical enhancement magic, explaining that gaining such abilities would help his swordsmanship. Noelia tells him to hold on, but before she finishes, Master Gawain, who has been eavesdropping, calls out to Finn. He says he'll teach him how to use physical enhancement magic in 1 week. Finn asks Noelia if that's okay. She confirms that Master Gawain is the best teacher for it. She adds that she'll stay there as Gawain's observer, just in case something happens to Finn, since losing him would be a huge loss to the world. Finn nervously replies that's an exaggeration. While Finn was still processing, Noelia suddenly shouted his name, warning that Master Gawain was in danger. There was a winged dragon nearby. Rushing outside, Finn was stunned to see Gawain riding the dragon. Gawain told them he was heading to Lloyd's place for a while and would tell him to leave his daughter in his care. He added that he'd be back before dinner and to prepare something for him to eat, then took off in a hurry. Finn stared after him, surprised that Master Gawain rode a winged dragon at twilight. That same day, Gawain returned with several arrows embedded in the dragon's body. The next morning, he cheerfully told Finn that now they had permission to stay over, it was time for training. Finn eagerly asked him to take good care of him, while Noelia, with a slightly disheartened tone, echoed the request, much to Gawain's surprise. Noelia explained that although she had already received training instructions, she wanted to be there to refresh her memory. Gawain nodded and said he understood. Removing his jacket, Gawain announced they would start with strength, the foundation of physical enhancement magic. He explained they should focus on the muscles they wanted to strengthen, then apply magical stimulation and healing to build them up. It was a magic that dramatically bolstered their muscles. Finn listened, wondering if he understood Gawain's point, but questioned if flexing muscles was really necessary. Next, Gawain introduced quickness magic, which temporarily strengthened muscle movement. To demonstrate, he moved back and forth at ultra speed, creating afterimages of himself. Noelia remarks that Master Gawain's magic is as unfathomable as ever, but she still can't understand why a mage needs to move like that. She explains that for a magician, keeping distance from enemies is crucial, and it's more effective to stop them with a barrier than to get close. As she says this, she and Gawain exchange a look, and suddenly Gawain dashes toward her, only to crash into her wind barrier. Noelia comments that Gawain has become too rough with her lately, recalling how he was much gentler back when she loved clinging to him. Gawain protests, but she reminds him that she's an adult now and it's time to graduate from such skinship. Hearing the word graduate, Gawain falls into despair. Noelia insists he treat her like an adult from now on. Finn thinks to himself that with Gawain's brutal style, it's no wonder survival isn't guaranteed when you get hit by him. Gawain, still in despair, turns to Finn with a new expression. He jumps toward Finn, telling him not to reject skinship, since the physical enhancement lessons are just beginning. Finn knows this is bad news. But before Gawain can hug him, Noelia slaps Gawain's back, warning him not to cause any more trouble for Finn. She adds that if he does, she won't forgive him. Then, unexpectedly, Noelia suddenly collapses, fainting on the spot. Gawain tells Finn Noelia is just having trouble breathing and should rest on the bed, promising they'll continue lessons tomorrow. The next day, Gawain reminds Finn that yesterday was theory and today is practice. He asks if Finn knows about muscle fibers, the bundles he saw when cutting through a monster. Gawain explains the same structure applies to his own arm muscles. Finn struggles at first, so Gawain breaks it down, no matter how much mana Finn has, suddenly boosting too much muscle at once will overwhelm his body and cause collapse, just like what happened to Noelia yesterday, which embarrasses her. Finn focuses and manages to activate the effect just as Gawain instructed. Gawain praises him for succeeding on his first try, calling him talented at physical enhancement magic. He hugs Finn and says it's no surprise since he allowed skinship with him. Meanwhile, Noelia lies on the ground, and Gawain comments she's the same as always. Noelia retorts that's why it's tough, training the body comes first. Gawain agrees, saying after their skinship yesterday, he realized Finn is already well trained. Finn thinks that mastering all physical enhancement magic could elevate him from a top-class swordsman to one of the very best. He remembers Alphine, the best swordswoman he knows, then smiles, unsure if he'll reach that level but feels hope thanks to Gawain's training. Gawain explains quickness is like strength but burns 3 times more stamina. He warns Finn to eat well or risk headaches, nausea, or even passing out. Finn gets it, no wonder he's been eating so much. He focuses quickness on his thighs and upper arms. Gawain sees no problem with the activation. Finn says nothing seems different on the surface, so Gawain tells him to try moving like before. Finn dashes at ultra speed. Noelia marvels that he learned just by watching Gawain once. Gawain tries to hug Finn, saying he's clearly inherited his magic, but Finn dodges. Gawain looks confused and uses quickness to chase him, but Finn dodges again. After a while, both crash to the ground, their stomachs growling. That night, Noelia writes in her diary about Finn. Since she began teaching him, he's absorbed magic at an alarming pace, picking up spells after just one explanation and demonstration. In 2 days, he's mastered strength and quickness, activating them effortlessly. His grasp on magic's effectiveness amazes her, especially how he instantly controls physical enhancement magic, the toughest she's learned so far. All that combined with his top-tier sword skills, it's not fair, and she admits she's a little jealous. She muses that while a bulkier Finn might be impressive, his lean, compact form suits him better. Imagining a muscular Finn, she hopes he won't overuse the magic and end up like Master Gawain. Still, if he ever wanted to hug her with that body, she'd drop her wind barrier willingly. Noelia notes, she told Susanna they're just teacher and student, but admits she became his teacher with hidden motives. The more she wishes they'd met under normal circumstances, the wider the gap she feels between them, built from all the awkward favors she's done for him. Now all she can do is watch over Finn without causing trouble and keep her distance, until a sudden knock at the door interrupts her thoughts. Finn's voice startles Noelia from outside her door, asking if he left his bag in her room and if he can come in to find it himself. She quickly asks him not to enter. The room is cluttered with his belongings, like his mantle and the observation diary she's been writing. Finn agrees it's not right to enter a girl's room at night and decides to look later. But Noelia insists she's found the bag and returns it to him. Finn apologizes for disturbing her so late, then suddenly turns away and leaves quickly after wishing her good night. Noelia, confused, wonders if she made him uncomfortable. Then she realizes what it might be. She had been hiding her body, fearing she'd inadvertently shown him too much skin, as if trying to seduce him. Tears well up as she thinks her respectable first impression is ruined. Even though she hid the diary, she worries he may avoid eye contact from now on. Clutching his mantle, she sniffles his name softly. The next morning, Finn and Gawain take winged dragons into the demonic forest. Suddenly, a strange light darts toward them, startling Finn. He asks Gawain about it, who explains it's the Grand Fortress Turtle, a dangerous creature that acts like a warning from the forest. If its attack hits the winged dragon's wings, it can tear through the membranes, and in the worst case, bring them crashing down to a fatal fall. Finn spots the Grand Fortress Turtle and recalls hunting many near the capital's outskirts. He notes they're slow, weak against ground attacks, but deadly to flyers. Gawain accelerates, lowering them just above the treetops. Suddenly, multiple glowing lights swarm them. Finn asks what those are. Gawain explains it's the turtle gathering spot, laughing as the creatures launch attacks. Finn is shocked. This hardly seems like a moment for laughter. Gawain dodges nimbly, saying it's their way of giving a warm, hungry welcome. Realizing he can't dodge them all, Finn chants a spell, conjuring a magical barrier around himself. 2 hours earlier, Finn and Gawain found Noelia exhausted with. When they asked, she embarrassedly admits she stayed up late writing a letter to the Magic Research Institute. Finn smiles, thinking she always gets too absorbed when it comes to magic. Finn gently pats her head and tells her to start sleeping properly. Magic research might be a kingdom task, but it's not worth burning herself out. When Noelia starts trembling, he worries if he was too blunt. But she quietly thanks him for caring and says breakfast is ready. She'll take his advice and rest a bit first. Gawain instantly perks up, volunteering to carry her, but Noelia shuts that down without hesitation and disappears into her room. During breakfast, Gawain grumbles, asking if Finn thinks Noelia is acting cold toward him. She used to be much more affectionate. Finn answers that she's a grown woman now, it's only natural for her to be embarrassed when treated like a child. Gawain sighs and admits he gets it. Finn figures he must be feeling a little lonely now that Noelia's all grown up. Afterward, Gawain tells Finn to hurry up and eat. They're heading into the demonic forest today to hunt monsters and gather materials for his sword. Finn hesitates, pointing out that he's only a bronze-ranked adventurer. Gawain scoffs and asks who would dare stop someone capable of using physical enhancement magic on their first try. He rises from his seat, telling Finn to get ready. Finn assumes they'll be walking, but then Gawain grins and points outside, to the winged dragon waiting for them. Gawain asks if Finn saw him do that round trip to Lloyd's residence on the winged dragon the other day. Finn nods, still a little stunned by the memory. To his surprise, Gawain announces that he's going to explain how to catch one. Finn should try it the same way. First, throw a fist-sized rock to get the dragon's attention. When it gets mad and dives at him, toss a straw rope around its mouth. Then jump on its back and hang on until it settles down. Once it gives up and lets out a high-pitched shriek, the capture is complete. Gawain hands him a straw rope and says that if Finn uses dragons instead of walking, travel becomes a breeze. But he warns him, never land one in the middle of a town unless he wants to get shot full of arrows. That explains the arrows stuck in the dragon's back when Gawain came back the other day. Finn starts to appreciate the practicality. Traveling by dragon really would save time. But even with physical enhancement magic, could he really pull off a stunt like that? Before he can finish the thought, Gawain grabs him and lifts him up. If he's got time to stand around doubting himself, then he's got time to move. With that, Gawain hurls him straight at the dragon, shouting for him to get going already. Finn reaches the largest dragon in the group and instantly feels the pressure. This one's massive. Gawain cheers him on from below, calling it impressive that Finn's going for the big one, the same one he gave up on himself. But Finn, eyes wide and tearing up, yells back that he only ended up here because Gawain threw him. Still, there's no turning back. Finn hurls the rope and grabs onto the dragon as it lunges. The beast thrashes violently, trying to shake him off midair. Gawain calls out that if he falls, he'll get snapped in half on the way down. It hurts like hell. That only fuels Finn's frustration. As he begins slipping, he quickly chants a lightning spell and fires it into the dragon's back. The jolt sends the beast screeching in pain, but it finally starts to calm down. Gawain watches from the ground and announces that it looks like the dragon's been tamed. Later, the dragons gather around a watering hole to drink. Gawain explains that once a winged dragon surrenders, it becomes obedient to its rider. They'll even come when called with a whistle. Finn nods, impressed, and compliments his dragon, calling it smarter than expected, but Gawain casually adds that winged dragons are also delicious. Not only can they fly you around, but they make for excellent emergency rations. You can fry it or fly it, either way, it's useful. Finn and his dragon both freeze. The creature stares at him, visibly unsettled. Finn laughs nervously and promises not to eat him, then decides he should probably give him a name. Back in the present, the turtle's magical bombardment hammers them from above. Finn barely manages to throw up a barrier in time, but the force knocks them off balance. He yanks hard on the rope to steady the dragon, keeping them from crashing. They just barely manage to pull through. Gawain praises Finn for controlling the dragon so well on his first try. He laughs, saying it would have been easier to just throw up a barrier and fly high, but that would have been boring. Finn freezes. So they didn't need to fly through that chaos at all. Gawain admits the whole point was to teach him how to dodge mid-air attacks the hard way. Finn just stares at him. Gawain asks if there's something on his face, but Finn brushes it off. He finally gets it. This remote location for Gawain's workshop isn't just eccentricity. Lloyd probably stuck him out here to keep him far from the city. Gawain tells him to land. It's time to gather materials. Demol, the dragon, makes a worried sound as they descend. Finn gently pats him and says he'll be counting on him from now on. Inside the dense, misty forest, Gawain explains their first target, magic-absorbing grass. It stores mana mist, and when the seeds are crushed and mixed with other materials, it becomes a mana-efficient magic stone. After some searching, Finn manages to find a healthy cluster. Next is blood-sucking mushrooms. They only grow on the heads of demon beasts. Gawain says they just need to harvest the mushrooms, but as for the bodies, they'll have one for lunch. He tells Finn to take the heads off cleanly. Finn launches into action. Once the beasts are down, Gawain nods in approval. They're roasting the whole thing, 3 portions for himself, the rest for Finn. While eating, Finn asks what they're after next. Gawain flips through his book and taps a page, pointing out a tough, nimble monster that needs to be captured alive. They trek deeper into the woods until the dense mist parts just enough to reveal an old, moss-covered ruin. Gawain glances over his shoulder and asks if Finn's ever been inside one. Finn shakes his head. He remembers hearing about them from an old excavator back in the capital. Whether it was extermination missions or just treasure hunts, Alphine always made the call, and she never liked ruins. He pulls himself out of the memory as Gawain tells him to eat quickly and get moving. Moving fast, Finn casts stone wall magic, sealing off the corridor and boxing in the slime. It writhes and bounces, trapped. Confident, Finn steps closer and mutters that speed means nothing without an escape route. But the moment he reaches for it, the slime clamps down on his finger. Startled, he recoils, and Gawain casually explains that this species bites. It's not poisonous, just different. They only need 2 for 1 sword. Gawain tells him to catch them quickly before night falls. Finn mutters for him to help, but Gawain, watching from above, says he can't come down. The second he does, the rest will scatter. After finally pinning down 2 slimes, Finn stacks them up and steps back. Gawain praises his work. Now that they've got everything, he can start forging tomorrow. He flashes a grin, saying it'll be an unbelievable sword, but Finn gets nervous and begs for something normal. Later, back at the workshop, Finn feeds Demol outside while Noelia approaches. He asks if she's feeling better, and she nods, then walks over to the dragon, surprised at its size. Finn introduces Demol, loyal, smart, and a bit intimidating. Noelia says subduing a creature like that suits him perfectly. She asks what he plans to do with it, and Finn wonders if he can raise it himself. Noelia tells him the obvious: if he brings it into town like this, it'll be shot down on sight. But then she offers a workaround. If Demol wears a cloth marked with her family crest, it might pass without being attacked. She even mentions space on the riding farm behind her mansion where he could keep it. Finn pauses. With the crest, Demol would technically fall under the Enestrosa household. Noelia flinches, flustered. She insists it's not like that, she just didn't want the dragon getting targeted. Nothing more. Finn agrees to the plan and crouches beside Demol, wrapping his arms around the dragon's neck. He thanks him for helping, then adds that Noelia's helping too, so Demol should show her some appreciation. As if understanding, Demol suddenly scoops up Noelia with his claws and lifts her onto his back. Caught off guard, Finn leaps up as well to keep her steady, landing behind her and wrapping an arm around her waist. He laughs nervously, saying that was unexpected, Demol suddenly flying off like that. Meanwhile, Noelia is too stunned to respond. Finn's face is close, his breath brushing her cheek. Her thoughts whirl as they glide through the sky. She manages to speak, quietly saying the view is beautiful. Finn figures this must be Demol's way of thanking her. Once they land, Finn notices Noelia's cheeks are flushed. He asks if she's running a fever or just exhausted from lack of sleep. Without waiting for her answer, he scoops her up and tells her to lie down, carrying her gently toward the house. Noelia goes quiet, overwhelmed, and just lets herself melt into his arms. Meanwhile, far away in the Hartford kingdom, Alphine curls up in bed with tears streaking down her face. As everything clicks into place in her mind, a wave of guilt hits her hard. She mutters to herself, calling herself an idiot for not seeing the truth sooner. There's a knock at the door. Her butler announces that Commander Jair of the Royal Knights has arrived. Alphine groans and tells him to make up an excuse, she's not in the mood to see anyone. But the butler adds that Jair was sent by the king himself, worried for her health. Before Alphine can argue, the door opens. Jair steps in, relaxed, and comments that she sounds more energetic than he expected. Alphine glares and scolds him for entering her room uninvited, even if it's on the king's orders. Jair ignores it and sits down beside her, saying it's been over 2 weeks since she returned from Algren, and everyone is worried she's come down with something. He kneels next to the bed, gently takes her hand, and quietly asks if she was able to see Finn. Alphine tries to deflect, saying Finn is away for swordsmanship training. Her butler steps forward, apologizing and admitting he was so worried about her that he explained everything to Jair on his own, without asking her first. Alphine grits her teeth, furious at the betrayal, and tells her butler that leaking his employer's secret is unforgivable. He should be ashamed of himself. Jair sits beside her and says there's no need to be so harsh, since the butler has just been consulting with him for quite some time out of concern for her well-being. He explains that he only came to comfort her after hearing the report that her precious Finn had died of illness in Algren. Alphine snaps at him, yelling that Finn isn't dead and repeating her claim that Finn simply went for sword training. But before she can finish, Jair pins her down on the bed. He notices Finn's insignia clenched in her hand and points out that it was taken from a male body with black hair and the same tattoo. Jair makes it clear, the body they found matches Finn's description. Alphine breaks down in tears, despair flooding her thoughts. She wishes she could just die and thinks to herself that if Finn is truly dead, she can just go to where he is. The urge takes over. She grabs a knife and moves to end her life, but Jair moves fast, yelling for the guards. He orders them to take the knife from her and knock her out if necessary. After some time, Alphine wakes up groggy, not knowing where she is. She asks out loud, confused. From behind, Jair's voice calls out, asking how she's feeling now. She asks again where she is. Jair tells her she's in his mansion and says she can use it however she likes. Jair smiles at Alphine and adds that she won't find anything in the room that could be used as a weapon. He says he saved her life and he can't let her try to hurt herself again. He lifts her chin and tells her not to be scared, assuring her that he isn't trying to lay his hands on her, since he prefers making his partners do what he wants while they're fully conscious. Alphine asks what he actually wants from her. Jair keeps smiling and says he's sure she has a pretty good idea of what he wants. Alphine answers that she isn't that sharp and won't understand unless he tells her clearly, calling herself stupid. Jair tells her to take her time until she figures it out, since he is a man of patience. He adds that until she feels better, she is welcome to stay as long as she likes, and perhaps this will be his way of showing respect for Finn, who died far up in the north. After some time, Alphine looks out the window and thinks about how the knight knocked her out with a single blow. She has never met anyone that strong in the royal capital. She lies back on the bed, realizing that Jair will not let her out until she gives in, even though all she wants is to see Finn in heaven and apologize to him. As she thinks about wanting to be with Finn, the scene shifts. Finn stands looking up at the sky, lost in thoughts of his past. Suddenly, he is startled by Noelia, who asks if something is wrong. The sound causes pain in his ears and he flinches. Noelia quickly apologizes for disturbing him while he was using his hearing enhancement magic. Finn tells Noelia it's all right and admits he needs to be more careful about where he uses his hearing enhancement magic. Back at Jair's mansion, a pair of maids enter Alphine's room carrying her lunch, but they find the room empty. Alphine is nowhere to be seen. Elsewhere in the mansion, Jair asks Alphine's butler for an update, since it's already been 3 days. The butler replies that while Alphine seems lifeless and lost in her thoughts, she's still eating her meals, so there's no problem with her health. Jair smiles, pleased, and says it looks like his plan is working perfectly. Alphine is now nothing but a helpless woman. The butler warns Jair not to let his guard down, explaining that Alphine has always been devoted to her sword and could still try to take her own life again. Jair says he knows, which is why he keeps the night maid, borrowed from the butler, close by at all times. He says he just needs one more step and then the sword maiden will fall into his hands. Meanwhile, Alphine is quietly making her way somewhere in the mansion. As she moves, she overhears a conversation. She hears someone mention Finn's disappearance, calling it very convenient for them. She stops and listens more closely, thinking she just heard Finn's name. Her butler continues, explaining he was able to get information from the Adventurers Guild in Aldrin about a man carrying an adventurer's badge. That's when the idea first came to him. Jair grins and calls it a brilliant idea, using a corpse about the same height as Finn, dyeing the hair black, and adding a tattoo on the neck to perfectly match Finn's appearance. He says bribing the Adventurers Guild officials and the man with the badge was the final touch, making sure the whole story lined up so Alphine would believe everything without question. Jair bursts out laughing, genuinely pleased with how well the scheme worked. He praises the butler for his part, but the butler quickly urges him to lower his voice, reminding him that Alphine has not completely broken yet. The butler warns Jair to never make a request like this again, since their real mission is to support the Prime Minister, Jair's father. Jair waves off the warning, saying he understands, but insists that Alphine is the most beautiful woman in the kingdom. He claims that once he finally has her, he won't need the butler's help for anything else. Alphine stands in the hallway, fists clenched in anger as she listens to the whole conversation. The truth hits her, everything she saw in Algren was a setup. The body wasn't Finn at all. She calls herself a fool for falling for such a cheap trick and nearly letting it break her. She feels ridiculous for being taken in by a fake corpse, then lets out a shaky laugh, admitting she truly is an idiot. Trying to steady herself, she decides to think the situation through. If she acts only on emotion, she'll fall for another trap. Now she knows Finn is alive, and Jair is just using this plot to force her into his hands, which she finds completely absurd. She realizes that Vigo has been working for Jair all along and might know more about Finn's whereabouts. Alphine makes up her mind to confront him and get the truth. She forces open the door and steps into the room, catching both Jair and the butler by surprise. Her eyes are sharp and focused. She tells them directly that she overheard their entire conversation and demands to know more about what they've been plotting. Jair spins around in shock when he sees Alphine standing in the doorway, demanding to know what she's doing there and where the maids have gone. Before he can react further, Alphine suddenly appears right behind him, her sword drawn and pressing cold steel against his neck. She tells him to forget about the maids and orders him to tell her everything he knows about Finn. She shoots a furious glare at her butler and tells him he'd better start talking as well. Jair tries to calm her down, asking if she's lost her mind, but Alphine presses the blade closer, drawing a thin line of blood. Jair warns her that if the king hears about this, she'll lose not just her sword saint title but her noble status as well. Alphine cuts him off, saying she doesn't care about any of those titles anymore, she only wants to know about Finn. She turns to Vigo, locking eyes with him, and warns that if he doesn't talk, his real master could end up dead. Vigo tries to reason with her, telling her to calm down and put the sword away, promising to tell her everything he knows about Finn. But Alphine presses the blade even harder into Jair's neck, making the cut deeper, and demands the truth first. Jair's composure breaks, he starts to cry and begs Vigo to save him, insisting he doesn't want to die. Vigo sighs and finally speaks. He says he's sure Finn is still alive. The man carrying Finn's adventurer badge actually picked it up in the frontier city of Huguenot, intending to pose as someone else. That man later traveled all the way to Algren. Alphine quickly asks if Finn really went to the frontier. Vigo answers that it's possible, but the truth is they lost all trace of Finn in Huguenot, and have not been able to locate him since. That's all the information he has for now. Alphine fixes Vigo with a serious glare and asks if he's sure he isn't hiding anything else. Vigo answers steadily that they believe Finn is still alive, but they truly have no idea where he is now. Alfine assesses him carefully and decides he doesn't have any more information to offer. Jair, with tears still in his eyes, pleads with her to let him go now that she's satisfied, but Alfine refuses. She declares that Jair will be her hostage until she leaves the royal capital, and she tells Vigo to fetch her a carriage immediately. To her surprise, Vigo apologizes and says he can't help her with that. The moment he speaks, 2 guards crash through the window and attack her. Vigo orders the guards to protect Jair, telling them not to hold back, even if it means killing Alfine. Alfine dodges their attacks and launches herself at one of the guards, swinging her sword with all her strength and shouting that she's got him. But she's stunned when her blade fails to cut through his arm, even at full power. The guard counters, landing a powerful blow and throwing Alfine straight out the window. As she falls, Alfine notices that the guard's skin is harder than a sword and his blood is green. She realizes she can't win a direct fight against them and needs to escape and find Finn. Spotting a carriage below, she twists midair and crashes onto its roof. The girl driving the carriage, startled by the sudden impact, is about to scream, but Alfine quickly covers her mouth. Alfine tells her to stay quiet and apologizes, saying she needs to borrow the wagon. The driver, Mela, is an excavator by trade and is left trying to process the chaos. She had just been heading out to explore some ruins when, out of nowhere, the famous sword Saint Alfine drops from the sky and claims her wagon. Mela starts to get excited, wondering what kind of adventure she's stumbled into now that the famous sword saint is hiding in her wagon. As Alfine hides inside, Mela keeps staring at her with wide, sparkling eyes. Alfine warns her to stay calm and says she's going to remove her hand now, so don't make a scene. But as soon as Alfine lets go, Mela blurts out, asking if she really is the sword Saint Alfine. Alfine quickly hushes her, saying not to make noise and explaining that she won't go into details but she needs to borrow the wagon for now. Mela is clearly confused, but Alfine figures anyone would be confused if someone dropped from the sky and demanded their wagon out of nowhere. After some time, as they sit together inside the wagon parked at the roadside, 2 guards approach and peer at them suspiciously. One calls out, asking if anyone is inside. Mela answers, asking how she can help them. The guard says they're looking for a woman with black hair who recently ran away from a mansion nearby while recovering from an illness. He points out that the person inside sounds like a woman and asks what she's doing parked there. Inside the wagon, Mela quickly takes off her clothes and answers that she's just changing because she was sweating from the heat. The guards don't buy it and insist they need to check inside. When they open the door and see Mela completely naked, they both freeze up and blush, flustered by the unexpected sight. Mela glares at the guards and scolds them for interrupting a woman while she's changing clothes. She points out that, as they can see, she doesn't even have black hair. Then she asks sarcastically if peeping on women is part of their job. The guards instantly blush, apologize for their rudeness, and hurry away without further questions. After they're gone, Alfine comes out from her hiding spot and quietly asks if the coast is clear. As she thanks Mela for covering for her, Mela suddenly leaps at her and bites her cheek, startling Alfine. Mela pins her down, raving about how delicious Alfine's cheeks are and asking if she can lick them more. She even comments on how Alfine has big jugs, embarrassing her further. A moment later, Alfine is sitting up, thanking Mela again for the help, while Mela just sits there quietly, sporting a fresh bump on her head. Mela then introduces herself as an adventurer who specializes in ruins exploration. Alfine explains that she wants to leave the royal capital and head to Huguenot, and needs Mela's wagon for the trip. She offers to pay as much money as needed, saying she has plenty. Mela thinks it over for a moment, and then lights up, excitedly declaring that she'll go with Alfine, suggesting they make a love escape together. Alfine is left in shock at the sudden declaration. Mela adds that she's going to register for a job at the guild in Huguenot so they can pass through the city checkpoints easily, and says she'll also pick out some cute clothes for Alfine. Meanwhile, back at Gawain's place, Finn tells Noelia that he's going to feed Dimol and the other dragons, so she can get started preparing their food. Just then, Gawain comes running over, shouting with excitement that it's finally done. Gawain grabs Finn by the shoulders, shaking him with excitement, and announcing that it's finally finished. He's made the perfect sword. He calls it his masterpiece and urges Finn to give it a try. Finn swings the sword a few times, immediately noticing how surprisingly light it feels despite its heavy appearance. He's impressed by how easy it is to handle, with perfect balance between flexibility and hardness. Looking up at Gawain, Finn grins and says it's no wonder he calls it a perfect sword. Gawain beams with pride, confirming it's his best work yet. Suddenly, a voice echoes out, saying it's honored that Master is pleased and looking forward to many years of working together. Finn freezes, confused by the word master, and glances at Noelia, who is too shocked to even speak. Finn then looks over at Gawain, who's pretending he didn't hear anything. Suspicious, Finn asks if Gawain put something extra in the sword. Noelia, regaining her voice, asks if the sword is what she thinks it is. Gawain keeps ignoring them, acting oblivious, but Noelia warns him that if he keeps pretending, she'll report him to her father and have his entire workshop relocated to the demonic forest. Gawain starts sweating nervously but still refuses to answer. Noelia steps aside and quietly tells him that if he tells the truth about the sword, she'll let the whole thing slide. Then, glaring at him in a way that looks just like her father, she demands an answer. Terrified, Gawain finally caves. He mutters that he wanted to surprise Finn, so he doesn't see why he has to reveal the secret now. But seeing no other option, he finally admits the truth. Finn's new sword is a magical sword with intelligence. Both Finn and Noelia are left in shock by the revelation. Gawain explains that he's always wanted to use a metal slime from the ancient ruins as material for forging a blade. When he finally managed to craft one, it reacted with the magic stone he embedded and unexpectedly started talking. Noelia shouts in disbelief, demanding to know what exactly he's created. She reminds him that creating an intelligent weapon is forbidden by the kingdom because of how dangerous they can be. Gawain tries to reassure her, saying there's no need to worry since the sword seems perfectly obedient to its owner. Both Finn and Noelia glare at him, clearly not convinced. Gawain hesitates for a moment, then reveals there's even more. The sword has the ability to absorb the essence of monsters and grow stronger. He calls it a sword that evolves by killing monsters and communicating with its wielder. Finn is stunned at the idea, a sword that can actually grow by absorbing essence. He asks why Gawain would give a weapon such a dangerous ability, especially when it might go out of control. He also wonders aloud if an intelligent weapon is really just a talking sword, since he feels like there's something more to it. Gawain, clearly excited, tells him the sword can do much more than talk. Not only can it speak, but it's also able to use magic. Finn yells in shock, realizing the sword can use magic on its own. Gawain adds that the sword does need to absorb magic from its wielder to cast spells but reassures Finn not to worry. The magic stone inside the blade is designed to reduce magic consumption. On top of that, the sword can also serve as a catalyst to activate Finn's magic, just like Noelia's staff. Finn studies his new sword, thinking back to the childlike voice he heard earlier. If the sword truly has intelligence, that voice must have belonged to the blade itself. The sword confirms it, cheerfully calling him Master Finn. Finn and the others are amazed that the sword can speak on its own. Curious, Finn asks the sword if it can actually read his mind. The sword replies that it can. Finn wonders if this is because his blood was mixed with the metal slime used to forge the blade, and the sword responds that it's possible. Wanting to test the sword's power, Finn asks if it can really use magic by itself. The sword says yes, but explains that right now, due to lacking enough essence, it can only use fire arrows. The sword then asks Finn for a target so it can demonstrate. Finn points toward the stove and tells the sword its target is the firewood inside, warning it not to blow up the whole stove. Everyone watches as strange sounds begin to emanate from the sword. A small flame forms at its tip before the sword fires off a blazing arrow, which lands perfectly in the stove. Noelia, still shocked, says the sword really can use magic, and notes that it even performed a high-speed chant. Gawain, beaming with excitement, asks Finn what he thinks and declares that, if he can mass-produce swords like this, magicians would never need to chant again. Noelia immediately shoots down the idea. She tells Gawain that before he can even think about mass production, he'll be thrown in jail. She reminds him that an intelligent sword capable of casting magic is far too dangerous for the kingdom to ever approve, which leaves Gawain hurt and frustrated. While Gawain complains, still not understanding why the kingdom would disapprove of such an invention, Finn is quietly amazed that he's ended up with such an extraordinary sword. After a while, Finn, Noelia, and Gawain arrive at the edge of the demonic forest. The sword, sensing the change, remarks that they're finally entering an actual battlefield, though it admits it feels nervous. Finn reassures the sword, telling it not to worry, he knows it's capable. Noelia agrees, adding that she's sure Finn will use the sword well. The sword thanks both of them, promising to do its best to be useful. As Gawain mutters to himself, feeling a little left out, Finn and Noelia suddenly spot something rushing toward their group. Before they can react, an attack slams into Gawain, knocking both him and his dragon to the ground. Finn stares in confusion, trying to process what just happened. Noelia quickly points to the source, a massive, three-headed monster. She recognizes it immediately as the demon beast Cerberus. Finn asks if it's powerful, and Noelia answers seriously that yes, it is, and it's honestly a bad idea to even try fighting it. She's confused, wondering aloud why Cerberus would come all the way to Yasuba's hunting grounds, since they're not known to appear in the southern part of the demonic forest. Finn sees that Noelia is frightened and wishes he could just turn back, but he quickly decides on a plan. He tells Noelia to get on Dimol, the dragon. Noelia, tense, asks if Finn is planning to go down there and try to rescue Master Gawain. Noelia worries to herself that no matter how strong Finn is, going up against Cerberus is just too dangerous. She reassures herself that if it's Master Gawain, he should be able to handle himself, but she can't help feeling anxious. Finn quickly orders Dimol to carry Noelia to a safe location, and as Dimol takes off with her, Finn leaps down into the demonic forest. As he falls, Finn chants a spell, and just before hitting the ground, he activates a wind barrier to break his fall and lands safely. Without wasting a moment, he uses his hearing enhancement magic to search for Gawain's whereabouts. After a minute of scanning the area, he locates Gawain hiding behind a bush. Finn appears beside him and announces that he's found him, startling Gawain. Gawain calls Finn a fool for coming and insists he needs to run away while he still can. Finn tells him he came to help, but before he can say more, Gawain urgently tells him to look behind. Finn turns just in time to see the Cerberus towering over him, its three heads glaring. Finn's sword pipes up, asking if they're going to fight and what it should do. Finn instructs the sword to use fire arrows to hold the beast back, granting it permission to use as much magic as necessary. The sword fires off a volley of fire arrows, but Cerberus seems completely unfazed and charges at Finn in a rage. Suddenly, Gawain jumps in front of Finn and throws up a magic barrier to protect him. Cerberus immediately attacks with its dark breath, a sinister blast that begins to eat away at Gawain's barrier, threatening to break through. Finn charges straight at the Cerberus and swings his sword, aiming to cut off one of its heads. But the moment he severs the neck, the beast's wound instantly heals itself. The sword quickly encourages Finn to try again, suggesting a different approach. Finn agrees and dashes forward once more, and this time, as he swings, the sword coats itself in magic. When the blade strikes, Cerberus howls in pain, and this time, the wound doesn't heal. Seeing that the magic worked, Finn thinks they might actually have a chance. But just as he starts to gain hope, Cerberus snaps back and lunges at him. At the last second, Noelia arrives, unleashing her wind blade tornado to shield Finn from the attack. Finn is shocked to see her, but Noelia tells him to save the lecture for later and stay focused on the fight. Finn quickly agrees, grateful for the backup, as Gawain calls out for them to come up with a plan. Noelia analyzes the situation, explaining that as a Cerberus, the beast's fur is highly resistant to magic, and its healing factor means it will take repeated, focused attacks to land a fatal blow. Finn responds that when his magic sword fired a fire arrow at Cerberus's wound, the flesh seared and stopped healing, so if they can keep hitting it like that, they might be able to bring it down. Gawain agrees but points out that they first need to stop Cerberus's heads from moving, otherwise, its breath attack could wipe them out in an instant. Finn says that in that case, they'll have to use much stronger attacks to finish the fight quickly. The sword suddenly suggests trying to engulf Cerberus in flames, which catches Finn off guard and leaves him a bit confused. Noelia agrees that searing Cerberus's wounds with flames might work, and Gawain supports the idea too. Without wasting another second, Gawain charges at the monster, shouting that they don't have time to overthink things, they need to move now. He calls for Dimmel to help distract one of Cerberus's heads. While Gawain keeps one head busy and Dimmel distracts another, Finn orders Dimmel to fly to the opposite side, setting up their attack. Using the distraction, Finn circles behind Cerberus, preparing his next move. He chants a spell, and his sword bursts into flames, ready for the strike. Just as he's about to attack, one of Cerberus's heads notices him and lunges, but Noelia jumps in front of Finn, using her magic to hold the beast back. Seizing the opening, Finn rushes in close and drives his sword deep into Cerberus. The blade unleashes a torrent of fire magic from inside, burning the monster from within and causing massive damage. Finn and his sword are thrilled to see so many flames bursting out, but Cerberus lashes out, smashing Finn and sending him flying across the clearing. Noelia and Gawain shout out in worry as Cerberus turns its full attention toward Finn. He staggers to his feet, admitting that the hit was hard, but he can still move and grip his sword. He activates body enhancement magic, determined to put everything he has into his next attack. Gawain calls him a fool, reminding him that using body enhancement magic is life-threatening, while Noelia looks worried after hearing the warning. Cerberus charges at Finn, but he dodges and lands a powerful slash to one of its heads. Leaping into the air, he focuses all his strength on the base where the three necks connect and commands his sword to target that spot. Finn hurls his sword with all his might at the base of Cerberus's necks. The sword pierces deep, ignites with all its magic, and burns the monster from the inside out, unleashing a final, devastating attack. Finn collapses to the ground, exhausted but relieved, saying they actually did it, even if now, thanks to using body enhancement magic at full strength, he can't move a single muscle. His sword, meanwhile, chirps with excitement, proudly announcing that it absorbed Cerberus's essence, and it tastes absolutely delicious. A moment later, Noelia and Gawain rush over, overjoyed to see Finn alive. Gawain tells Finn to eat something and recover his strength, insisting that Cerberus meat is surprisingly tasty. Finn, still catching his breath, asks if Cerberus is even safe to eat, sounding skeptical. Later that same day, Lloyd sits down with Finn to hear about what happened. Lloyd mentions that he's heard the sword Gawain forged for Finn is intelligent, and that Finn used it to defeat Cerberus. Finn confirms it's true. Lloyd then brings up the winged dragon in the stables and asks about it. Finn explains that he and Gawain caught it together, which only makes Lloyd more frustrated. Lloyd sighs heavily, scolding Finn for riding the winged dragon even after he'd warned him 3 times not to do anything reckless or frightening. Finn is confused at first, but then realizes Lloyd is talking about the dragon he and Gawain captured. Lloyd goes on, annoyed, saying he knew this would happen. Anyone who gets mixed up with Gawain always ends up causing trouble. Lloyd also warns that weapons with intelligence are strictly forbidden in the kingdom, so he can't simply allow Finn to keep it. But Noelia immediately interrupts, reminding Lloyd that Cerberus has powerful regeneration and is highly resistant to magic. They only managed to defeat it thanks to Finn's sword. Lloyd argues back, insisting that swords don't need intelligence. He says if a weapon's will ever drives its wielder mad, nobody would be able to stop it, and that's exactly why such weapons are forbidden. Noelia disagrees. She firmly insists that Finn's sword won't go berserk. She's watched it in action and seen firsthand that it's completely obedient to Finn. The sword not only casts magic on its own, but also acts as a true magic sword, channeling Finn's power. Noelia explains that none of this would be possible without Finn's unique magic power. No ordinary person could wield a blade like this. Lloyd struggles to understand, but Noelia clearly states that this sword can cast its own spells and infuse itself with magic, all because of Finn. Finn backs her up and tells Lloyd how, when he struck Cerberus, the sword's flames seared the monster's flesh, preventing it from healing and allowing them to kill it. Lloyd admits it's hard to believe that a sword killed a Cerberus, but if what Finn says is true, It only proves how dangerous a magic sword like this really is. Just then, the sword itself lets out a loud yawn and starts speaking, asking where they are. Lloyd goes silent as the reality sets in. The sword is actually talking. Finn calmly confirms that the sword can speak, right in front of him. Lloyd's frustration finally boils over, and he calls Gawain a complete idiot for creating such an outrageous sword. The sword immediately chimes in, asking if Lloyd is calling it outrageous. Lloyd, still glaring, says yes, he's heard that this sword can cast magic all on its own, and he wants to know if it's true. The sword answers eagerly, confirming that it can indeed cast spells by itself, and then explains that it learned this ability by absorbing the essence of monsters. It even adds that Cerberus was especially delicious, its voice brimming with pride. The sword continues, saying that after defeating Cerberus, it unlocked around 10 new spells, everything from fire and poison to lightning and other attributes. Finn listens, shocked at just how quickly the sword is growing. He realizes that all these new abilities must be traits absorbed directly from Cerberus. The sword admits that, while it's still not as strong as its master, it feels certain it will keep getting stronger the more it's used in battle. Lloyd, still a little stunned, walks over to the window and comments that the sword is remarkably well spoken for a weapon. Without turning around, he tells Finn that if he's going to keep the sword, he should give it a proper name. That's all Lloyd has to say. He leaves the room, clearly too exasperated to argue further. Finn turns to Noelia, asking if this means her father has finally accepted the sword. She nods, saying she thinks so, though she still looks a little surprised by the whole conversation. As Finn stands there, lost in thought about what to name the sword, it quietly speaks up, telling him that it would be happiest if its master was the one to choose its name. After thinking it over, Finn suggests Dare, and the sword immediately responds with enthusiasm, happily accepting its new name. Finn lifts the sword high and declares its new name, Dare. He promises the sword that they'll keep working together from now on. Dare glows with excitement, repeating its name proudly. Meanwhile, in her room, Noelia sits quietly, still processing everything that happened. She can hardly believe her father actually approved both the winged dragon and the intelligent sword. She murmurs to herself that Finn really is incredibly lucky. Glancing at a photo of her mother on the table, Noelia quietly reflects that Finn might even surpass her father, who is widely regarded as a hero throughout the kingdom. Especially when it comes to magic, Finn's talent could be considered one of the best in a century. His innate gifts are extraordinary, yet he always stays humble and kind to everyone. She thinks about how he even managed to capture a winged dragon that large, and her admiration for him only deepens. With tears brimming in her eyes, Noelia wishes she could confess how deeply she loves him. Just as she's lost in those feelings, her maid suddenly opens the door, startling her. The maid announces that Noelia should start getting ready, since Finn will be coming soon. In a hurry, Noelia quickly hides Finn's robe, scolding her maid for not knocking. The maid assures her that she did knock 3 times, but since there was no answer, she let herself in. The maid tells Noelia it's time to wash Master Flick's robe and return it to him, causing Noelia's face to flush with embarrassment. She begs her maid to keep this a secret, and the maid promises she will. As she helps Noelia get ready, the maid remarks that it's been 20 years since she became her attendant, and she never imagined that someone as dedicated to magic as Noelia would one day fall in love. Noelia quickly tries to deny her feelings, insisting she doesn't think of Finn that way. But her maid isn't convinced. She tells Noelia bluntly that she'll never win Finn over if she stays so timid. The maid urges her to take this opportunity, get dressed up, and show Finn a different side of herself. She explains that's why she asked the Lord to celebrate the defeat of Cerberus, hoping it would give Noelia the perfect chance. Noelia mutters that she doesn't know how to do it without making Finn uncomfortable. She worries about how to be close to him without making him hate her. She admits in a whisper that she really loves him, more than she's ever felt before, and it's frustrating to be swept up in these emotions, not knowing what to do next. Her maid gently wipes away her tears and tells her that she's found a wonderful love, promising to do everything she can to help Noelia's feelings reach Finn. With that, she encourages Noelia to get ready. That evening, Finn sits at the dinner table, feeling more nervous than usual. Noelia pours him a drink and he thanks her, but as he looks at her, He's struck by how easy it is to forget she's the daughter of a frontier count. Lloyd, noticing the mood, coughs and comments that Noelia seems a bit overdressed for the occasion. He then nudges Gawain to say something too. Gawain, ever blunt, tells Lloyd he's being tactless, pointing out that Noelia put a lot of effort into her appearance, especially pushing up her chest. Before he can say anything more embarrassing, Noelia swiftly uses silence magic to shut both her father and Gawain up, turning the room quiet in an instant. Suddenly, a new voice cuts through the silence, complimenting Noelia on how much her magic has improved. Noelia immediately recognizes the voice. It's her master, Linus, the famed sage of wisdom. He explains that he received a letter from Suzanne early that morning, letting him know Noelia had taken on a disciple, so he decided to visit in person. Finn quickly stands up, apologizing for the late greeting and formally introducing himself, respectfully calling Linus the Sage of Wisdom. Linus approaches with a friendly smile, shaking Finn's hand. He mentions that he's already heard quite a bit about Finn from Noelia's reports, then turns to Noelia and teasingly says that her new disciple is quite the handsome lad, praising her for choosing so well. Noelia blushes at the compliment, clearly flustered. Linus tells Finn that if he's Noelia's apprentice, then by extension, he's also Linus's grand disciple, so there's no need for any formalities between them. At last, Gawain manages to break through the silence magic and pipes up, saying that Finn is an interesting kid. He actually managed to master Gawain's physical enhancement magic. Linus laughs and admits he never thought anyone would actually pick up that wacky technique. Gawain agrees, adding that not even Noelia could master it, so he'd pretty much given up on passing it down, until Finn came along and inherited it. But Lloyd quickly cuts in, warning everyone not to be too easy on Finn. He insists that the only thing he recognizes in Flick is his natural sword talent. Linus simply sits down with a sigh, smiling as he says it looks like he's finally found a promising young talent worthy of inheriting that stuffy old hero title. Lloyd replies that, while Finn clearly has talent, there are still plenty of things he needs to work on, so he can't just hand him the hero title yet. Noelia quickly tries to steer the conversation away from their complicated debates, and asks her master to focus on Finn's sword instead. Linus listens as Finn explains everything about the weapon. He describes how he can imbue the blade with different offensive magic and activate those spells with each cut. Linus points out that if Finn can apply various magical attributes to the blade, he could exploit an enemy's weakness more easily. Still, he admits it's unusual to hear about a magician using a sword this way. Noelia agrees, saying it's exactly that combination, Gawain's and Linus's physical enhancement magic with Finn's magic sword, that could be a revolutionary discovery. She adds that she wants to continue studying this new magic together with Finn, which catches Lloyd off guard. He looks ready to stop her from getting further involved, but just then, a soldier bursts into the room. The soldier urgently reports that the Adventurers Guild has sighted an abyss walker-like creature in the demonic forests. The guild master confirmed the news with reports from adventurers who survived a recent attack. There's no mistaking the danger. Lloyd immediately orders Commander Mice to gather the soldiers, place adventurers on guard around the city, and instruct all citizens to stay indoors until it's confirmed safe to go outside. Mice, already moving, asks the soldier if he can still run, and the man nods. Linus turns to Lloyd and says he'll join the expedition as well. Everyone in the room is focused on confirming the Abyss Walker's presence, and reporting back to the king. They need to move quickly to the demonic forest. Hearing this, Finn feels a surge of emotion. Memories of his past flood back. He remembers how he and Alphine lost their parents to the Abyss Walkers. Lloyd apologizes for having to end the celebration early and tells Finn that he'll have someone prepare a room for him, planning to leave him behind for safety. But as Lloyd is about to leave, Finn steps forward and asks to join the expedition. He says that if the Abyss Walker who killed his parents has returned, he can't just stand by and do nothing. Lloyd looks at Finn's determined expression and, after a brief hesitation, agrees to let him come along. Finn is surprised by the approval but quickly recovers, saying he'll go ahead first on Demol to scout out the situation in the forest. Lloyd, a bit taken aback, realizes that the winged dragon is finally proving useful at a crucial moment. He then orders the soldier to give Finn the exact location where the Abyss Walker was seen. Suddenly, Noelia calls out that she will accompany Finn. She tells Susanna to help her change into traveling clothes right away, determined to go with him. Lloyd is immediately taken aback and tells Noelia he won't allow her to join the mission. But she stands her ground, refusing to back down. She reminds him that she lost her mother too, and Lloyd falls silent at her words. Mize quietly tells Lloyd it's clear Noelia won't listen to anything he says. Left with no choice, Lloyd grabs Finn and, with a serious look, tells him that because it's an emergency, he's trusting Noelia's safety to Finn. Finn promises he understands the responsibility. With that, Finn and Noelia quickly set out for the demonic forest. As they travel, Finn remarks that it's a relief the moon is bright tonight, making it easier to search. According to the report, the Abyss Walker was last seen deep within the malicious forests. Finn hopes they can confirm the situation before Lloyd and the others arrive. Noelia tells him that, as a child, her father taught her a lot about Abyss Walkers, so if she encounters one, she's confident she won't mistake it for anything else. Finn admits that he only knows about them from stories, so he'll be relying on her knowledge. Noelia quietly agrees, leaning on him for a moment as they ride through the night. By the next day, Finn realizes it's almost noon, and they still haven't found anything significant. He continues searching the forest with Noelia riding Demol just behind him. Suddenly, both of them are startled as all the animals and monsters of the forest begin rushing past, fleeing for their lives. Finn quickly notices a shadow rushing toward him and braces himself, raising his sword just in time to block a powerful attack. Noelia casts visual enhancement magic and immediately spots the jet black skin and single red eye. She tells Finn that it's definitely an Abyss Walker. All Finn can do is defend against the heavy onslaught, barely holding his ground under the weight of the monster's blows. His sword, Dare, quickly offers support, unleashing a bolt of lightning magic at the Abyss Walker. But the attack does nothing. The magic is completely ineffective against its armored skin. Finn tries to counterattack, dashing forward and stabbing at the creature, but even with all his strength, he can't pierce through its hardened hide. The sword remarks that this enemy doesn't have a monster factor, and Finn is momentarily thrown off by that, realizing it might mean Abyss Walkers aren't true monsters at all. Finn manages to land a glancing blow and injure it slightly, but it's nowhere near enough. Suddenly, the Abyss Walker lands a solid hit, sending Finn crashing back into a tree. Noelia, alarmed, starts to rush over, but Finn shouts for her to stay back, insisting that he's all right. He realizes that if he hadn't used body enhancement magic, that last attack could have been fatal. With his sword and magic both failing to make an impact, Finn wonders if Abyss Walkers have always been this strong. He forces himself back to his feet, determined not to let the creature gain any more ground. He knows he has to find another way to beat it, no matter what. Finn knows if he can't do something about the Abyss Walker, then the same tragedy from 20 years ago could repeat itself. But just then, to his surprise, the Abyss Walker disappears from there as if it never existed. After a while, Noelia is healing Finn, her face growing redder as she heals the different parts of Finn's body, her hands lingering a bit longer than necessary. Finn notices her embarrassment and asks why her face is so red and if she's getting tired, telling her that he can take care of it himself if needed, but she quickly gets on top of him, insisting that she's perfectly fine and he should let her heal him. Suddenly, Lloyd's voice echoes through the area, saying so that's where they were, and just as he steps in, he stops in shock after seeing Noelia and Finn in a compromising position, unable to finish his sentence. Later that night, Gawain can't believe that even with Flick's powerful magic and sword, he still couldn't cut through the Abyss Walker. Lloyd says it's impossible, there's no way magic would fail against it, since in the past, Florina's magic managed to blow an Abyss Walker away entirely. Noelia also confirms that sword and magic were ineffective against it, but points out they still haven't tried using the magic sword's full abilities yet. Finn then tells everyone that he saw something like green blood come out when he attacked, which confuses Lloyd. Suddenly, chaos erupts outside as soldiers shout that they are under attack and a creature with terrifying speed is tearing through their ranks. Then, the severed head of one of the soldiers rolls into their tent, leaving everyone in shock. Rushing outside, they see the Abyss Walker standing among the bodies of several fallen soldiers. The Abyss Walker then points a cannon at Lloyd, and Finn instantly gets a bad feeling from it. The monster attacks, firing at Lloyd, but Finn jumps in and manages to save him just in time. The huge explosion caused by the Abyss Walker's cannon leaves them both shocked. This attack doesn't feel like magic at all. Two soldiers rush the monster, shouting that they won't let him get away with it, but their swords are useless and can't pierce its body. The Abyss Walker kills both soldiers easily. Linus sighs and tells Lloyd to let the soldiers retreat. He warns everyone to get down and begins chanting a spell. He uses one of his strongest spells, Spark Explosion, but to everyone's shock it has no effect on the Abyss Walker. Finn and Noelia said, "The monster isn't affected by magic at all." Lloyd agrees, saying even Master Linus's magic didn't work, and starts to wonder if this is really the same type of Abyss Walker they fought before. Finn steps forward and says he'll use the magic sword, casting a spell that envelopes his blade in flames. Linus notices and realizes this is the magic sword. Lloyd asks Gawain if his sword can do something like that, and Gawain replies that his swords were used as experiments for magic swords, which makes Lloyd angry, but he calms down, reminding everyone that defeating the Abyss Walker is their top priority. Lloyd then asks Linus if he can imitate Finn's magic and cover his sword in magic. Linus uses the same magic as Finn, and Lloyd's sword is also covered in flames, ready for the next attack. Linus warns Lloyd that unlike Finn's magic sword, the effect and duration of this spell are unknown, so he can't guarantee Lloyd's safety. Lloyd replies that it's an emergency, so there's no need to worry about that, then dashes toward the Abyss Walker and attacks with all his strength. He's shocked by the power of the magic but sees that it's effective, thinking this might actually work. Lloyd shouts for Finn, and he leaps from above, striking the Abyss Walker with full force. Together, they manage to kill it. Afterward, Lloyd says they managed to defeat it, but now he needs to report this to the king as soon as possible. Linus reflects on what just happened, noting that an Abyss Walker immune to both swords and magic could be a harbinger of a new invasion, or maybe a survivor from 20 years ago. Sometime later, Lloyd and the others arrive at the site where it all began 20 years ago. Lloyd tells Finn that back then, there was a floating mansion, a place that spread nightmares across the world. Finn realizes this is where the Great Invasion took place, and also the birthplace of the Abyss Walker that took his parents away. Lloyd confirms it, saying this is where the kingdom's nightmare began. There's a massive hole in the ground and, right next to it, Noelia's mother's grave. Mice tells Finn that in those days, when so many lives were lost and there was only despair, if it hadn't been for Miss Florina, none of them would have made it home. Lloyd adds that it's ridiculous to call himself the hero who saved the country from the Great Invasion, since he was only leading the survivors of the assault unit back home. Finn pays his respects at the soldiers' graves, thinking that because Lloyd is alive, everyone can remember the terror of the Great Invasion and stay prepared for the future. He quietly thanks the souls of the fallen, reflecting that his own generation has never lived through the invasion. They only know what the surviving adults have told them. Finn then turns to Lloyd and asks if he would allow him to learn more about the tragedy that happened during the Great Invasion. Lloyd nods, saying that soon, there will be even more things the younger generation must be ready to handle. Noelia adds that she wants to continue researching the Abyss Walkers and magic as well. Linus is pleased to hear this, saying with young people like them around, the future is in good hands. He points out that Lady Noelia is already 20 years old, so it's about time they start passing things down to the next generation. Noelia gets embarrassed, protesting loudly that it's way too early for that. Before she can finish, Lloyd cuts in, agreeing and warning that he'll chop up anyone who tries to take Noelia away. After returning home, they immediately arrange a meeting to discuss the situation with the Abyss Walker and what steps to take next. Guild Master Arnold informs everyone that the blockade has been lifted since it's now confirmed to be safe. Linus points out that despite their extensive search, they only managed to find that single Abyss Walker from before. Lloyd wonders if that individual has really been hiding in the malicious forest for the past 20 years since the Great Invasion. Mice reports that adventurers often enter and leave the malicious forest to hunt monsters, so it wouldn't be strange for the Abyss Walker to have gone undetected all this time. Gawain adds that maybe it's a new abyss walker that just crawled out of the abyss fall. He remembers that during the Great Invasion, even Cerberus, who usually stays deep in the forest, came out, so maybe there's some kind of influence at work. Finn listens closely and takes notes on everything. Then he hears that before the abyss walkers first appeared, a mysterious pillar of light rose from the large hole. Mice agrees, saying he remembers people in the city talking about something like that, but this time there were no such signs. Gawain wonders if that's the case, then where did this abyss walker actually come from, as everyone tries to make sense of the situation. Suddenly, Guildmaster Arnold raises his hand and admits he has troubling news. The Adventurers Guild has held meetings across multiple parts of the kingdom, and it seems monsters similar to this abyss walker have been spotted in other regions. The other local guilds haven't taken the reports seriously yet and have refused to investigate properly. As soon as Lloyd hears this, he explodes in anger, demanding to know when Arnold first heard about these sightings and why he wasn't informed immediately. Arnold explains that he first got word about it half a year ago, and before that, similar reports had been coming in from various guilds. Most of those reports were made by novice adventurers, so they weren't given much credibility. But this recent incident was reported by a survivor of the Great Invasion, so he decided to bring it up now. Lloyd interrupts furiously, telling him to be quiet. He scolds Arnold, calling him a fool for dismissing reports based on adventurers' ranks, and says that if they'd known about this half a year ago, they could have prepared and responded properly by now. The guild master bows deeply, apologizing and admitting he never realized abyss walkers could still exist. He insists on taking responsibility and offers to resign immediately. Lloyd shakes his head and tells him that resigning won't help anyone. The situation is already serious, and if the guild master quits now, it'll only throw the guild into chaos. He instructs him to report even the smallest, most suspicious detail from now on, no matter what. Gawain suddenly chimes in, pointing out that if that's the case, there could be more abyss walkers lurking somewhere in the kingdom. The whole room goes quiet and stares at him in disbelief, and Gawain realizes maybe he shouldn't have brought it up, but the possibility hangs in the air. Lloyd answers that he's already sent a letter to the king by horseback, but things in the capital are complicated. The aristocrats don't work well together, and the Prime Minister, Radgriff, along with his child, is especially likely to intercept or block Lloyd's report. They probably hate the idea of Lloyd's authority expanding if he's given power as a countermeasure against the abyss walkers. Finn's mind drifts to the Radgriff family, remembering that when Alfine was granted the title of Sword Saint and made a noble, it was the Radgriff aristocrats who pushed for her status. The Prime Minister's son had pressured the king over and over, even though Alfine herself hated the man. Linus agrees, saying if it's Prime Minister Radgriff, he's certain the report would just be dismissed out of hand. He says he'd like to personally warn the king, but with the threat of the abyss walkers combined with the kingdom's constant power struggles, they risk the country plunging into war again. As the weight of the situation sinks in, everyone falls silent, realizing just how complicated and dangerous things have become. Gawain shakes his head, frustrated by the kingdom's indecisiveness. He mutters that the kingdom's useless, there's no choice but to mass-produce those intelligent weapons he's created. Lloyd snaps at him immediately, saying it's way too early for that. He insists that Dare's situation is still contained within their domain, and with his authority, he can cover it up for now. But Lloyd reminds everyone that creating intelligent weapons is a national taboo, and mass production absolutely needs the kingdom's approval. Noelia, busy scribbling down everything in her notes, speaks up. She agrees that the kingdom's rules matter, but she points out that the only real weapon against an abyss walker is a magic sword. If they wait for the slow approval process, the whole country could fall before anything gets done. Gawain, thinking it over, says if intellectualization isn't permitted, then he'll just come up with a new way to enclose magic into the sword itself. Everyone is caught off guard by this. He's confident that if he can work out a technique to wrap magic around a blade, they might be able to recreate the same effect as Linus's flaming sword. He turns to Finn and asks him to bring Dare over. Finn rushes out and comes back quickly with the sword in hand. Dare, still sleepy, yawns and asks what's going on. Gawain immediately starts his explanation, telling the sword that it's actually a magic stone and that he's beginning to understand a bit more about the source of Dare's abilities. If his experiments go well, they should be able to forge new swords with the same effect as Linus's flame weapon, without crossing the line into forbidden territory. Linus points out that if Gawain manages to complete his new sword, it could be their best bet, especially if the kingdom doesn't act in time. Lloyd agrees, noting that there's no law against forging swords, so he gives Gawain official approval to use the necessary funds. Gawain immediately requests a workshop inside the mansion, which annoys Lloyd, but he gives in and tells him not to cause trouble this time. A little later, Finn visits the guild reception. The receptionist asks if he wants to send his reward money anonymously to the orphanage again. Finn nods, explaining that since he'll be traveling for a while, he wants to send it all just in case. The receptionist brings up the investigation into the new Abyss Walker species and the special request to create new magic. Finn says the request came directly from the Marquis and Linus, and admits he never expected to use his powers for something that could actually protect people. The receptionist assures him that this kind of job couldn't be done without his skills and magic. She trusts him completely. Finn remembers how Lloyd told him he's aware of the danger and promised a proper reward for his efforts. He also recalls Noelia insisting on joining him as a recorder for his new magic. Lloyd protested, but Noelia immediately shut him up with magic and got approval from Linus instead. She explained that her father wanted her to go along and take care of Finn, and Linus even praised Lloyd for finally acting like a responsible parent. Finn noticed from Lloyd's face that he never actually said those things. Back in the present, Finn confirms to the receptionist that Lloyd finally agreed, though Miss Susanna will also be joining them. The receptionist is glad, saying that since Noelia and Susanna are practically sisters, Susanna will be a huge help on their trip. She wishes Finn luck on his journey. Stepping outside to wait for Noelia, Finn gets distracted when a boy runs into him, apologizing for not paying attention. Finn freezes, struck by the boy's resemblance to Alfine, but before he can say anything, Mela comes running up and scolds her brother for not watching where he's going. She apologizes to Finn and drags her brother away, while Finn watches them go, wondering about the similarity. Noelia soon joins him and asks if something happened. Finn brushes it off, thinking to himself that Mela called the boy her brother, so it must just be a coincidence, and tells Noelia it's nothing.